Chapter 1202. Wu Yuding and Zhuo Changlu were determined not to let Lei Changtian know about this. They would rather die than say anything. Haha, this mattered that they could still keep it a secret if they told others. But if they told you, it would be very difficult. If it really became a secret that everyone knew, it would be very interesting. In the Tower of Annihilation. What's the taboo? Zhuo Xiaoyan asked with concern. This is not a small matter. The secret must not be spread. Come closer and I'll tell you. What? There's no one else here. The secret must not be spread. Zhuo Xiaoduo planned for a long time, and finally made Zhuo Xiaoyan fall into his trap, and fall into his evil hands. At this moment, he couldn't help but feel proud and high-spirited. He hugged her tightly and moved closer. Zhuo Xiaoyan struggled, but found that she couldn't move. Zhuo Xiaoduo hugged her too tightly, so she stopped struggling. It wasn't that she didn't want to resist, but that she couldn't resist. Xiao Duo was so fierce and strong now. So much so that after a long time, Zhuo Xiaoyan opened her eyes. She looked at Zhuo Xiaoduo in front of her and murmured, "Dog, I knew you were up to no good." Zhuo Xiaoduo bit her little nose and asked, "How am I bad?" "Anyway, you're up to no good." Zhuo Xiaoduo hugged her slender waist and murmured, "Then, do you want me to be even worse?" "No, I don't. Nian Mao, we're flying. Didn't Mother say? Flying. We can do that." No. You. Take your hand out. Don't move. I've been holding it in for a long time. After a long time. Zhuo Xiaoyan was finally released. Her face was red, and she looked at herself up and down worriedly. Well, she was dressed neatly, and her skirt was not wrinkled. Her two small hands touched here and there restlessly. Sometimes she touched her collar, sometimes she tugged at her skirt, sometimes she adjusted her belt. Then, he took out a small mirror, and looked at his hair. She bit her plump lips, her eyes filled with shyness, joy, embarrassment, and anger. His eyes were blurred, as if there were thousands of stars in his eyes. Little doggy was too mean. You're so bad. Zhuo Xiaoduo, on the other hand, followed closely behind her with his hands in his pockets. His face was in high spirits as he whistled nonchalantly, as if nothing had happened at all. No matter how much Zhuo Xiaoyan rolled her eyes, Zhuo Xiaoduo remained calm. Wu Yuding came out of the room, and sighed as she looked at the two of them. She was experienced in the ways of the world, so there was no need for her to say anything. She didn't even bother to guess. Zhuo Xiaoyan was like an iceberg in front of outsiders. But when she was in front of her family, she seemed to be transparent. Everything and any emotions were written on her face. Basically, one could tell what had happened just by looking at her face. 100% sure. So whether these two had gotten into trouble when they were young, one could tell just by looking at Zhuo Xiaoyan's face. It was still the same now. No matter how calm Zhuo Xiaoduo appeared, no matter how calm and nonchalant he was, anyone who saw Zhuo Xiaoyan's face would know that these two had made a breakthrough. Or rather, Zhuo Xiaoyan had taken a step back, and Zhuo Xiaoduo had taken a step forward. Nian Wu Yuding waved her hand and said, "Come here." Zhuo Xiaoyan walked over bashfully and said in a mosquito-like voice, "Mom, don't misunderstand. We didn't do anything." Wu Yuding covered her forehead. "Did I ask you? What do you want me to not misunderstand?" Seeing Zhuo Xiaoduo's innocent face, as if he really didn't do anything, Wu Yuding sighed helplessly. Thinking of the previous agreement, it seemed that now that he had soared, she couldn't restrict him anymore. Before the fusion is complete, you can't lose your virginity. Do you understand? Wu Yuding looked at Zhuo Xiaoduo. "I understand, Mom. Don't worry. I promise to keep my virginity. I won't let anyone have their way." Zhuo Xiaoduo chuckled. Go away. You can be even more thick-skinned." That afternoon, Li Chenglong and the others woke up one after another. They were in good condition. Then, without exception, Zhuo Changlu and Wu Yuding interrogated them. Yes, interrogated them. However, the interrogation process this time was much gentler than before. Li Chenglong and the others didn't intend to hide anything from father and mother Zhuo. Faced with the warm and caring questions, they answered everything they knew. They didn't hide anything, afraid that father and mother Zhuo wouldn't understand if their answers weren't detailed enough. After the interrogation, Wu Yuding and Zhuochanglu gave Li Chenglong and the others some pointers about their cultivation, attributes, questions they had on the road of cultivation, things they should pay attention to in the future, and even the direction they should take in the future. Especially to Li Chenglong, Long Yuxing Yumoyan, Li Changming and Pai Yibao. Then, they urged everyone to quickly enter the Tower of Annihilation to cultivate. It would be best if they could learn from each other first, and exhaust themselves to the point of exhaustion. Therefore, the 12 of them swarmed into the Tower of Annihilation, and started a group battle. Then at Zhuoxiao's request, Zhuochanglu and Wu Yuding entered the Tower of Annihilation to check on Zhang Xuejuan. She's fine. She can wake up on her own, Zhuochanglu thought for a while. Then, he transmitted a wisp of spiritual power to her, and said, "Wait patiently. Also, if there are any heavenly treasures or cultivation resources, just stuff them into her stomach." Xiang Chong was overjoyed and hurriedly agreed. "You also have to be prepared. After she wakes up, maybe her personality will change a little," Wu Yuding reminded him. "I understand. It's okay. I can take it." Xiang Chong nodded repeatedly. Finally, it was Zhuoxiao's turn. The two of them came out of the Tower of Annihilation and called Zhuoxiaoduo over. "You can prepare to fuse now." Zhuochanglu looked at Zhuoxiaoduo with an unusually serious expression. "Okay." Zhuoxiaoduo took out a corner of the plate of creation. Zhuochanglu held it in his hand and examined it carefully. Zhuochanglu was not worried about anything else. The only thing he was worried about was whether Zhuoxiaoduo obtained the broken horn of the plate of creation from the Green Dragon Holy Temple that belonged to the Green Dragon Holy Temple. After all, it had been in the Green Dragon Holy Temple's possession for countless years. If there was a trace of the Green Dragon Holy Temple's remnant soul, it would make sense. But if there was really a remnant soul, even if it was just a trace, with the legendary Green Dragon Holy Temple's power, it would be easy for him to possess Zhuoxiaoduo. Zhuochanglu did not want the Green Dragon Holy Temple to possess his son's body, so he checked it very carefully. After he checked it once, Wu Yuding checked it again. Finally, the husband and wife worked together and used the power of the world's peak cultivation to completely clean the broken horn of the plate of creation. Then, Zhuochanglu checked it again on the basis of this. He checked it thoroughly and patiently, and finally confirmed that there was no longer any danger on the plate of creation. In order to be absolutely sure, Wu Yuding wrapped it with her own spirit. Then, Zhuochanglu used his spirit to add another layer of insurance. With so many layers of protection, even if there was really a remnant soul of the Green Dragon Holy Temple, the husband and wife could completely refine it with their power. Until now, the husband and wife were completely relieved. "Let's begin." The two of them immediately set up 3 layers of soundproof enchantment. Then, they instructed Lei Changtian to stand outside the enchantment and protect them. After thinking for a while, they also chased Zhuoxiaoyan out. Then, the husband and wife's spirit turned into nothingness. Only then did they let Zhuoxiaoduo start the final preparations. After all, the husband and wife's spirit was too strong. What if they snatched their son's opportunity under the influence of their spirit? In short, they had considered all aspects. Zhuoxiaoduo sat cross-legged, with the sky-mending stone in his left hand and the bay laurel honey in his right. He suddenly exploded with extreme spirit power. In an instant, the divine palace was filled with light. The black gas of the god-slaying spear, the yellow gas of the Wahuang sword, the black and white gas of the black and white gourd, Zhao's red fire gas, the hot gas of Zhurong's fire, and the green gas of the spirit clan. All kinds of mystical auras soared into the sky. In the blink of an eye, Zhuoxiaoduo's sea of consciousness was completely emptied. Then, a jade plate-like object slowly emerged from Zhuoxiaoduo's chest. At first glance, the jade plate-like object was sparkling and round. However, upon closer inspection, one could see that the jade plate-like object was modeled with countless tiny lines. None of them were complete, and could be said to be incomplete. However, one could also see that many of the tiny lines that were originally flawed seemed to have been repaired by some external force. Only a shallow trace was left. The jade plate-like object gradually turned from an illusion to a real object. The purple gas was dense, and the round plate finally condensed into a solid object. From the looks of it, the outer edge was really intact. Only the middle of the plate was missing a bead. There was a hole the size of a soybean. Zhuochanglu looked at it with his invisible body. He vaguely felt that this was a hole for a rope, but it didn't seem like it. Why would such a treasure need a rope? In a cloud of purple gas, a simple face seemed to appear. A deep gaze quietly looked over at the moment they met this gaze. Zhuochanglu and Wu Yuting's bodies stiffened. They suddenly felt that they couldn't move at all. It was as if this gaze determined the life and death of the two people with a single glance. However, this face immediately rippled and shook. A domineering aura suddenly appeared and rushed over. Vaguely, it was filled with infinite anger. A voice was faintly discernible and indistinct. I created the world, but you plotted against me behind my back. The merit of creating the world was stolen. You actually became the heavenly Tao. Do you have any shame? It was intermittent, and the last 3 words suddenly sounded like a bell. The simple face suddenly shook and then dissipated. Then, the entire jade pendant bloomed with a clear aura. The brilliance began to circulate, and the true appearance of the jade pendant also appeared. The corner of the plate of creation on the table seemed to feel some kind of summoning. Suddenly, it flew up and spun around, slowly emitting a purple mist. The purple gas also emitted from the round plate slowly became thicker. Then it began to spin. As soon as it started to spin, a black and a white light suddenly appeared on it. As it spun faster and faster, the black and white light merged into a ball dot with a whoosh. The corner of the plate of creation flew over. It circled around the jade pendant, and then slowly spun until it couldn't be seen clearly. Only a ball of light was spinning. Then, a faintly discernible tremor sounded that it was as if family members who had been separated for tens of thousands of years had suddenly reunited. They were trembling with excitement and crying. It was a kind of feeling that came from the bottom of their hearts. At this moment, whether it was the continent of astral souls or the continent of Umno Alliance and Tao League, everyone, no matter what they were doing, including the soldiers who were fighting at the Sun Moon Pass, suddenly, they all felt a kind of sadness in their hearts. It was the kind of sadness that came from being reunited with joy after a long separation. Suddenly, one by one, they quietly shed tears. No one was an exception. In the major cities, everyone silently bowed their heads, tears falling like rain. In the major cultivation holy lands, everyone quietly comprehended, tears streaming down their faces. The husband and wife who were quarreling suddenly shed tears at each other. Their hearts softened, and the husband silently pulled his wife into his arms. In front of the Sun Moon Pass, the people who were fighting to the death suddenly stopped fighting. One held a saber, while the other held a sword. They looked at each other with tears streaming down their faces. Many people simply threw away their swords and sabers and sat on the ground. Their hearts were filled with grief as they wailed loudly. It's too hard. Too hard. Countless old generals who had been fighting for countless years closed their eyes at this moment, tears gushing out like a tidal wave. They had been fighting for such a long life. The fresh faces that fell next to them flashed in front of them one by one, and each of them smiled at them. These old generals who didn't frown and only had pride in the face of death cried like children. On the Sorcerer God Mountain, the flood which closed her eyes. She felt sad, and 2 drops of tears fell from her eyes. But then she suddenly woke up and looked up at the sky. The sky is crying. All the points of providence that Zhuochanglu had collected in his divine soul seeped into the creation plate drop by drop, that they turned into smoke and merged with the purple clouds. Half went into the creation plate, and the other half went into the creation horn. Then, 2/3 of a drop went into the jade pendant, and 1/3 went into the creation horn. This ratio gradually shrank. In the end, 99% went into the jade pendant, and 1% went into the creation horn. Zhuochanglu sat cross-legged, feeling countless emotions rushing to his heart. He cried and laughed, and tears flowed continuously. He seemed to see endless sadness and helplessness, and countless joys and sorrows. He saw the mighty figures who moved mountains, filled seas, and laughed proudly at the stars being plotted against and killed one by one. That kind of grievance, helplessness, and angered countless heroes after doing what they wanted to do the most. But the greatest benefits were stolen by others. A general who had gone through hundreds of battles and conquered the world was framed and killed before he could even complete his mission. A person who had given the world ample food and clothing for the reform was killed at a celebratory banquet. A person who had single-handedly covered the retreat of the entire sect was killed by a sneak attack by his junior brothers and sisters, who had always been jealous of him when he was seriously injured after defeating a strong enemy. Countless thoughts surged into his mind. Everyone can overcome the dangers in front of them, but even immortals can't guard against a knife in the back. It's difficult to escape the trajectory of fate. Heroes of the world can't control fortune and misfortune. The trajectory of fate. The heavenly Tao is heartless. Who can predict fate? Who can see through people's hearts? Who can reverse fate? Not controlled by man, not locked by the earth, not determined by the heavens. To man, it's a blessing of life and death, but to the heavens, it's the rotation of fate. The appearance of heaven and man is not an appearance. It's a way to defy the heavens and change fate. Anyone who defies the heavens will be punished by the heavens. How domineering is the heavens? Since the creation of the world, only one person has not occupied the karma. Swordsmanship heard a loud laugh in his mind. The heavens are created by me. The karma of the world is but a smile. Then came the second stage of the appearance of heaven and man. All the techniques poured into him like a tide. Swordsmanship was struggling to hold on. Although it was only the second stage of the chant, it was so vast that it seemed endless. It was almost bursting his head. I don't occupy the karma, so I can create the appearance of heaven and man. Turn yin and yang. Reverse the universe, know fortune and misfortune, predict fate, defy fate, and govern life and death. Those who inherit my legacy will do as they wish. I was born free and unfettered, and I will leave at ease. I don't think about the past, and I don't think about the future. Although I have plotted against you, I have no regrets. The opportunity of the great calamity of the world is to perfect the Tao of the heavens. I used the opportunity of the great calamity to shatter the heavenly Tao plate. You became a god as a mortal, so I will open the door as a mortal. I don't lose a bit of my true spirit. I just want to see the person of destiny, the appearance of heaven and man. Wherever you can go, there will be where I can go. Ha 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 ha. There was a burst of heroic laughter. Go, go. Swordsmanship let out a long breath. He only felt a swelling pain in his head, and it was instantly filled with countless knowledge. Automatically assimilated, he spat out a mouthful of blood. This mouthful of blood was bright and eye-catching, and even a little dazzling. It was so red that it was glowing. It was Swordsmanship's natal spirit blood. Puff! He spat it onto the jade pendant that was still spinning slowly. The jade pendant flashed with red light. Suddenly, it exploded with an indescribable red light. The red light was so dense that even Swordsmanship's figure could not be seen. The red light suddenly exploded, and then it suddenly retracted. It stopped spinning and stopped in front of Swordsmanship. It was a jade pendant. The palm-sized corner of the creation plate was only a little small protrusion after fusing with it. It was the east. After the fusion, the eastern corner began to emit infinite purple light and purple chi. And then it was injected into the jade pendant, the creation plate, and the jade pendant were no longer separated. Even the connecting point did not have a single crack. It was as if it had always been like this, and had never broken. Then, the entire jade pendant turned into a ball of purple light, and slowly seeped into Swordsmanship's body. Swordsmanship's body swayed twice. He only felt that his spirit was exhausted to the extreme. He slowly fell to the ground. Before he completely fell to the ground, he was already snoring loudly. Swordsmanship and Wu Yuding appeared. They only felt that the shock in their hearts had reached the extreme. The two of them looked at each other, and both felt a lingering fear. Their hearts were thumping violently, and their mouths were dry. This is Great God Pangu? Wu Yuding bit her lip, and transmitted her voice. Be careful with your words. Swordsmanship hurriedly reminded her through voice transmission. Don't mention it. Wu Yuding's face was full of fear, and she nodded repeatedly. This, Xiao Duo's opportunity, is really The husband and wife did not know how to describe it. Who would have thought that this was a trap? And it was the two of them who were playing. And the one who was now in charge of everything was unaware. Zhuo Changlu and Wu Yuding wished that they could erase their memories from just now. But they could not do it. This was no longer a fight between immortals. But they did not dare to think about it. They did not even dare to think about it. Looking at the sleeping Zhuo Xiaoduo, Zhuo Changlu's expression was very interesting. Our son. I have to say, he has a big heart. Wu Yuding's head drooped. She looked up and revealed a bitter smile as if she was crying. Yes, he really has a big heart. I feel like I'm awesome now. I can't believe I could give birth to a son with such a big heart. Me too. That night, a strong earthquake occurred in Shangjing City, and the ancestral tomb of the Wang family suddenly collapsed for some reason. The land where the ancestral tomb was located, along with some of the surrounding areas, directly turned into a large lake. The Wang family was shocked to the point of losing their souls. The ancestral tomb was gone. What was going on? At the same time, there were many cave-ins in Shangjing. The ancestral tombs of several families were damaged or collapsed. And the alarms of the entire continent suddenly sounded. The situation at the Sun-Moon Pass changed. Currently, the Dao League's 2 million troops were fighting against the UMNO alliance. But for some reason, the situation changed overnight. The Dao League's heavenly kings made a mistake in their decision. The 4 defense lines of the east, west, north, and south were all lost. The Wu people's army marched in. They stepped into the Sun-Moon Pass. As for the Dao Alliance army, they had been fighting a battle of attrition for quite some time. However, after falling into a disadvantageous position, they actually began to fled. It was simply unbelievable that such a thing happened to the army at the front line. But it happened because the 2 heavenly kings of the Dao League realized that they could not win and made another choice. Strategic retreat. They retreated 2,000 miles and formed a new defense line. But with this retreat, the army's morale changed. So, the retreat became a retreat. At this moment, the 4 great legions of the Star Spirit continent were still recuperating from the battlefield. They just received the news that the Dao League's army had been completely defeated. Suddenly, the situation became critical. All sides of the astral souls were moving. Nan Zhengqian and Dongfang Xingyang rushed back as if their lives depended on it. The heavenly king of the right and the others also went to the battlefield. Even the star-plucking monarch, who had not appeared on the battlefield for thousands of years, went to the front line. All the masters of the astral souls immediately went to the front line to support. Bai Yunduo and Lei Changtian rushed over as soon as they received the news. In addition, the Sword King, Saber Demon, Qin Sha and the others also returned immediately. The heavenly Dao suddenly became chaotic. For some reason, the aura gazing technique was useless. The astral souls suddenly became unstable. All the masters went to the front line, but it was easier said than done to push back the UMNO Alliance's army. The 7 swords of the Dao League also arrived. They were so angry that their mouths were twisted. The 7 swords of the Dao League's army made such a mistake, and they felt ashamed. However, they did not have the time to settle the score with them at this time. They did not even have the mood to mock them. Everyone returned to their teams as soon as possible. Once a team had 80% of its members, they did not wait any longer and immediately entered the battlefield. Such a change stunned the 12 shamans of the UMNO Alliance. Why did the battle plan suddenly have a breakthrough? This was simply a fucking bastard. However, they did not dare to stop it. They could only let the battle continue to deteriorate. Because if they gave the order to retreat now, the morale of the entire UMNO Alliance's army and fighting spirit would be completely destroyed. How many years have we been receiving such education? Invade the astral souls. Unify the world. Now that we finally broke through the defense line, we have to give the order to retreat. Then all the people who died, all the battles, what was the point of all these years? The sudden deterioration of the battle situation caused the 3 continents to shake violently. Chapter 1203. The Starsoul Continent and the Dao Alliance continent urgently mobilized their forces in response to this sudden turn of events. They had to make sure that the situation didn't continue to worsen. Otherwise, if it really did collapse, only the most powerful forces would be able to intervene. On the other hand, the Umno Alliance continent was also mobilizing their forces. The Astral Souls continent and the Tao League continent definitely wouldn't allow the situation to deteriorate any further. They would definitely respond with all their might. After all, this was the combined forces of the two continents. Once they gained the upper hand, they might even launch a large-scale counterattack. In an instant, the forces of the Astral Souls continent surged toward the front lines like a rising tide. Some of them were at the back of the pass, while others had already charged to the front of the pass. Many Tao Integration Stage and Heavenly Ascension Stage cultivators also joined the battle. The situation was unprecedented. After all, this was the first time the Umno Alliance had broken through the Sun-Moon Pass defensive line in tens of thousands of years. Their morale was at its peak, and their battle intent was at its peak. In the air above the battlefield, a few great shamans, the 7 swords of the Tao League, and the heavenly kings of the Astral Souls continent were also engaged in a fierce battle. The battle seemed to be 100 times more intense than the battle on the ground. However, the battle in the air was actually, while the battle was dazzling, the great shamans were also urgently discussing countermeasures. What the fuck is going on? The monster race is about to return, and there are already signs of it. The 3 continents aren't strong enough to fight against this powerful enemy. How did the situation suddenly take a turn for the worse? How did it become a battle between the 3 of us? The Umno Alliance's golden-scaled great shaman was furious. In the long tug of war, not only did the Astral Souls continent produce many powerful cultivators, but the Umno Alliance also produced many prodigies. In the past 2 years alone, a large number of Heavenly Ascension Stage cultivators had emerged, and they had all entered Zhu Wu's secret area for training. Soon, another batch of outstanding young elites would break through to the Heavenly Ascension Stage from the returning stage. They would then be able to enter the secret area for further training, further strengthening the Wu people's foundation. In the future, they would be able to defeat the monster race. It could be said that the situation was good. All of the great shamans were hoping that things could continue on like this in order to nurture a large number of Tao integration stage ascendants in the final few years. Because at this level, in the intense changes in spirit energy and the life and death battles, after the return of the Demon Alliance and the merger of the continent, there was an extremely high chance that they would shed their cocoons and become a butterfly, becoming a true expert. That was the only way to stabilize the situation and make it a one-sided defeat. Who would have thought that the Astral Souls defense line, which had never been shaken for tens of thousands of years, would fall at this moment? Moreover, the first thing that the generals did after losing their territory was not to counterattack and retake the lost territory, but to retreat. Moreover, the retreat turned into a rout of 1,000 miles. Wasn't this a joke? What do you want the Umno Alliance's higher-ups to do? There was no reason to not let the shaman army, which was full of fighting spirit, continue to attack. But if they continued attacking like this, when would it end? The Wu people's overall combat strength was indeed superior to the Tao League's and the Astral Souls human races. But that was only in a one-on-one comparison. If the 2 continents cooperated sincerely and joined forces, even the Umno Alliance would be at a disadvantage. As the Astral Souls human race continued to grow stronger, even though the Umno Alliance still had the upper hand, they didn't dare to casually start an extreme war. In a 3-way contest, if 2 sides were to fight to the death, only the 3rd side would emerge victorious. This was also the main reason why the Tao League and the Astral Souls human race didn't put in any effort. They didn't believe that if the Tao League and the Astral Souls human race worked together to destroy the Umno Alliance, the Astral Souls human race wouldn't turn around and destroy the Tao League. Similarly, the higher-ups of the Astral Souls had the same considerations, which was why the war between the 3 races was limited to the Sun-Moon Pass area. This allowed the 3 races to maintain a terrifying yet delicate balance. When the confirmation of the demon race's imminent return was confirmed, the relationship between the 3 parties changed again. From being hostile to each other, It became a covert cooperation between the three parties to fight against the demon race. In reality, it wasn't because the demon race was too strong that any one of the three parties, including the UMNO alliance, might not be able to defeat it even if the three parties worked together. However, as the situation changed, the situation of the war changed drastically, and the situation took a turn for the worse. At this moment, the higher-ups of the three parties were collectively at a loss. Yu Dongtian was furious. He sent a voice transmission. What the fuck is this Dao League? Everyone is eating shit. How can they not lose? The Dao League's Daoist Feng and Yu Dongtian joined hands to fight against the golden-scaled Grand Witch. Their faces were full of shame, and they scolded loudly, but they didn't respond for a long time. Although he was sometimes narrow-minded, if he was careless in such a big matter, then he really had no redeeming qualities. Then, how could he cultivate to the peak of the cultivation realm in this world? After Marshal Shimin and Marshal Beigong heard the news, they quickly responded. They increased their own formation and opened up a path for the Dao League's defeated troops to retreat from the battlefield. Then, they quickly gathered their troops and blocked the UMNO alliance's troops from the north and west. They suppressed the enemy's momentum and pushed back step by step. Now they had already reached the left side of the defense line. If they continued with the current momentum, they might be able to force the UMNO alliance's troops out of the defense line. However, the south and east sides were in a much more miserable state. Marshal Dongtian was especially good at observing aura. Before he left, he had specially observed his own aura. He was sure that nothing major would happen in a short period of time, and the strategy he left behind was to defend their own formation. But now the situation had changed abruptly. Moreover, it was such a huge and unimaginable accident. The East Army was in a hurry to fight, and they did not have a general to lead them. They suffered heavy losses. When Dongfang Xingyang came back, he was furious. However, it was a fact that the battle was not going well. Even though Dongfang Xingyang gathered his troops and fought back with all his strength, the battle situation was still not very optimistic. Bai Yunduo and the king of Zwolu were fighting against the West Sea Shaman on the East Road. On the other hand, Nan Jingqian's South Army was in an even worse situation. Yu Xingqian was leading them personally and defeated the two heavenly kings of the UMNO alliance. Now they were fighting against the Fire Shaman. All in all, the Dao League's sudden defeat caused the entire battle situation to collapse. It was almost impossible to salvage the situation. In Shangjing, Zhuo Changlu and his wife knew that the situation at the front line was unprecedentedly serious. They did not have time to wait for Zhuo Xiaoduo to wake up. They told Zhuo Xiaonian to take care of the situation at the front line. Then, they packed up and immediately tore through space to take care of the situation. Their speed was naturally faster than Dongfang Xingyang and Nan Jingqian. They were much faster. The people they were going to face were also not the UMNO alliance's army that the East and South armies were facing. Zhuo Changlu went straight to the UMNO alliance's land. He even used his divine thoughts to shake the flood witch and led her to come here. At this time, they had to make a decision. The UMNO alliance needed people who were powerful enough to come here. The UMNO alliance's army had to withdraw from the Sun-Moon Pass in the shortest time possible. Otherwise, once the astral souls invaded the Sun-Moon Pass, there would be blood everywhere. Once the hands of the UMNO alliance's army were stained with the blood of the people, it would no longer be a battlefield. That would be an unresolvable hatred that would last for generations. On the battlefield, there was no resentment between life and death. However, when it came to killing the innocent, there would be no reconciliation. This was the basic philosophy of a soldier. At the Sun-Moon Pass, a strong wind blew. A long roar shook the heavens and the earth. The moment Zhuo Changlu arrived at the border, he flipped his hand and threw tens of thousands of UMNO alliance's army out of the Sun-Moon Pass. Get out of the Sun-Moon Pass. A loud roar shook the sky. A silhouette of a person rushed forward from the Wizard Alliance's side and shouted in a stern voice, "Minister, you have broken our previous agreement by personally making a move." Zhuo Changlu shouted, "Ho Yunhai, you don't have the right to talk to me. Call flood over." The Great Witch Dan Kong and the Great Witch Bing Ming were dozens of miles away from each other, and their voices were very loud. However, as soon as they saw the people on the opposite side, they lowered their voices and shouted, "Fight steadily and surely, retreat first. I will go and find boss to deal with him. Don't make unnecessary sacrifices. Soldiers against soldiers, generals against generals. Even if you all rush up and self-destruct, it will be useless. This is the Heaven Patrol." Then he rushed up to the sky and shouted, "Zwa, you broke the agreement. My brother will not let you go. Wait for your death." Zwa Chonglu did not move. "I will wait. In half an hour. If your Alliance's army doesn't retreat, I will kill you all. Behind me are hundreds of millions of unarmed civilians. I don't care if you break the agreement." Senior Shaman Dan Kong shouted, "You are shameless. You are a scoundrel." Senior Ice Hell Shaman said angrily, "Despicable. How dare you be the top person in the world?" Zwa Chonglu snorted, "Whether I am despicable or not, it is not for you to say. I will only say this once. If you don't retreat, don't blame me for being ruthless." Senior Shaman Dan Kong's face was full of grief and anger. "Just you wait." Senior Ice Hell Shaman said sullenly, "When boss comes, he will teach you a lesson. How dare you break the agreement?" Then he ordered, "Withdraw some of them." When the Alliance's army saw the legendary Heaven Patrol throne arrive at the Sun Moon Pass, no one dared to act rashly. They quickly retreated. In midair, the figure of the Heaven Patrol throne was as tall as a mountain. It was thousands of feet tall and huge. The Heaven Patrol sword in its hand was more than 6,000 meters long. It reflected the sunlight in the sky and kept flashing. When everyone saw it, their hearts trembled. With such a huge sword, every slash could kill thousands of people. It was as easy as eating and drinking. A gentle and charming shadow was faintly discernible beside Zhuo Zhanglu. However, no one believed that this rain demon had truly not come. The husband and the wife had been together for a lifetime. Naturally, they were together. In the face of such extreme power, all the Alliance's army was extremely sullen, but they could do nothing. At this moment, the Heaven Patrol throne and his wife appeared in the sky. Senior Shaman Dan Kong and Senior Ice Hell Shaman could not defeat them. If they really dared to go up and fight, they might die here. The Alliance's army was secretly angry. Everyone gritted their teeth and waited. They would let you be arrogant for a while. When our Lord Flood comes, let's see how you die. However, under the gaze of hundreds of millions of people, the Flood Witch did not arrive immediately. She delayed for more than half an hour. No one knew what happened that delayed her. Chapter 1204. Everyone in the Alliance was waiting anxiously. After a full 40 minutes, the Great Flood Witch finally arrived. As soon as he looked around, he saw that it was the Sky Inspecting Minister, who had personally stepped forward to bully someone. Immediately, his 7 emotions surged up, and he flew into a rage. "Zwa, what have you done? Ask the Alliance to withdraw from the Sun Moon Pass immediately." "Bullshit. Are you going to withdraw or not?" The more they talked, the more tense they became. They started to fight. Their voices were like thunder, shaking the sky and the earth. At the end of the battle, the Great Flood Witch transformed into his true body, which was thousands of feet tall. He hadn't been seen in the world for a long time. He also took out his 1,000 Souls Nightmare Hammer and fought against Zhuo Zhanglu's broadsword. The two of them were fighting in the air. "Flood, do you dare to bet with me?" "Ha ha ha. I, Flood, have never lost a battle in my life. Just tell me, do you dare or not?" "Bet on what?" "Bet on the future of the continent." "Oh, Flood, today, you and I will have a fair fight. If you can defeat me today, I will ask the astral souls to surrender to the Alliance. You will not suffer any losses. What if I can't defeat you?" "If you can't defeat me, the Alliance will withdraw from the Sun Moon Pass and not invade the Sun Moon Pass for a month. How about that?" "Good. It's a deal." "Wait, what if it's a tie? You think you can fight me to a draw, Zwa?" "Haha, Flood, who do you think you are? Do you really think you are the best in the world?" "I am the best in the world." "Tell me, what if it's a tie? You also said that if I defeat you, you will let the Star Soul continent surrender to the Wizard Alliance. My wager is to stop the war for a month. Since the wager is so unfair, if it's a tie, I will lose and we will retreat for a month. It's a deal? It's a deal. Good. Under the witness of tens of millions of soldiers, the publicly recognized #1 expert, the Great Flood Shaman, made a bet with the pillar of the Star Spirit continent, the Sky Patroller throne. It was a battle to determine the winner. Seeing that the bet had been made, the tens of millions of soldiers of the Wizard Alliance cheered excitedly from all directions. On the other side, the soldiers of the Star Soul continent cheered so hard that their voices were hoarse. The Flood Witch, victory. Sky Inspecting Minister, victory. Both sides were in high spirits, cheering like a tsunami. The Sky Inspecting Minister said, "If that's the case, please." The Flood Witch laughed. "Why do you want to go somewhere else? Don't tell me that you don't have the confidence to perfectly control your strength here? Are you afraid?" The Sky Inspecting Minister asked in a deep voice. "Then we'll do it here?" "Yes." "Good." Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the two flew high into the sky and fought in their normal forms. They went back and forth for more than 1,000 rounds, but there was no clear winner. As the battle continued, it gradually became more and more intense. In an instant, the two of them became thousands of feet tall. One of them held a huge hammer as big as a mountain, while the other held a huge saber that was thousands of meters long. They clashed fiercely in the sky. This battle was so intense that even the sun and moon lost their light. For the first time, the cultivators of the 3 continents saw the peak combat power of a true peak expert. The visual effect of the saber slashing through the universe and the hammer destroying everything in its path was breathtaking to the extreme. So this is the true pinnacle of power. So this is the true peak combat power of this world. It's really too strong. The two of them fought fiercely for a day and a night. Everyone stared at the turbulent winds and clouds in the sky without blinking. Spatial cracks tore through the sky one after another, and then disappeared again. Only the area below the two of them was calm, as if nothing had happened. This showed that the two of them had perfect control of their own power. They were both meticulous. They were evenly matched from beginning to end. Although the Flood Witch was extremely ferocious, the Sky Inspecting Minister did not take a step back from beginning to end. The countless experts below were dumbfounded by what they saw. Finally, with an earth-shattering sound, the Thousand Souls Nightmare Hammer and the Sky Inspecting Saber collided again. The two of them laughed at the same time. Awesome! Awesome! Zhuochanglu laughed. Flood, it seems like this battle is a draw. The Flood Witch laughed boldly. What a good Sky Inspecting Minister. Zhuo, you're not bad. You've achieved great results in your transformation into the mortal world. Your improvement is so great that it's beyond imagination. In this world, there's finally an opponent who can fight with me. This battle is a draw. The Flood Witch laughed. A bet is a bet. From now on, with your surname Zwa, this life won't be lonely. No Alliance Army. Withdraw 3,000 miles and give up the Sun Moon Pass. Following the Flood Witch's order, the No Alliance Army retreated despite their reluctance. After all, the whole world was the witness of the Big Boss's bet. There was nothing to say. The Flood Witch's bet was also not a problem. One must know that the Flood Witch was recognized as the strongest person in the world. It had been a long time since anyone could stand shoulder to shoulder with her. No one would have thought that there would be someone who could fight her to a draw. Although there had always been people who said that the Sky Inspecting Minister, the strongest person in the human race, was the Flood Witch's only opponent in this world. It was only an opponent. No one thought that the Sky Inspecting Minister could really stand shoulder to shoulder with the Flood Witch. But after today, the Flood Witch had personally confirmed that the Sky Inspecting Minister, who had experienced the transformation of the mortal world and made a breakthrough, could truly stand shoulder to shoulder with the Flood Witch. In other words, the Sky Inspecting Minister had become another strongest person in the world alongside the Flood Witch. The reason why the peak was called the peak was because it was always so narrow that it could only accommodate one person. It could be said that the second strongest person in the world could still be restrained by others. But the first strongest person in the world could not be restrained by anyone. And this extreme, this peak, this exception, had been broken by the sky-inspecting minister. It had been broken. The flood, which had been the strongest person in the world for a long time. But he was a very principled person. There were things that he would do and things that he would not do. This was the flood witch. But the sky-inspecting minister was not like that. This minister had almost no principles to speak of. To him, as long as he could make profits for the astral souls, that was his principle. No one should offend him. That was his principle. This kind of person was the most terrifying. Originally, he was ranked second only to the flood witch, and this had already caused the other peak cultivators to complain. At that time, everyone still had fantasies. Zhuangchang, you are indeed fierce, but you are not as fierce as the flood witch. If you really go too far, we will go find the flood witch to seek justice. Especially the experts of the UMNO alliance, they were full of confidence. But now, this guy was also the strongest person in the world. He had been proven by the flood witch to be the strongest person in the world. This was simply great ice witch, great raging fire witch, great witch Dan Kong. And the others opened their mouths and almost cried out. The crisis of the sun-moon pass that everyone had been thinking about, the huge crisis of the 3 continents killing each other, had been resolved. But how would they live in the future? Zhuangchang, this guy, could be neck and neck with the flood witch alone. But don't forget, he was never alone. He had Rain Demon by his side. Even if his cultivation was not as strong as him, it was not much weaker than him. What was worse was that this couple looked open and upright, graceful and magnanimous, but in their bones, they were ruthless characters. The sky is 3 feet higher, and the feathers of a swallow are plucked off by a swallow is not enough to describe the degree of stinginess of this couple. In the past, when they met this couple, it was inevitable that they would take away their treasures. Now even 2MT bow might not be enough to deal with them. The UMNO alliance withdrew their troops overnight, but the withdrawal of troops here was only limited to the flood witch's words. She did not mention the withdrawal of small teams, especially the independent expert groups. They had already infiltrated the astral souls. Because of this sudden withdrawal, the local war became more dangerous. However, Zhuangchang and the flood witch did not mention this. After all, casualties were unavoidable in war, and this kind of battle between experts was the easiest way to promote a breakthrough. The Southern Army, which was the furthest away, had already returned to their original position when they received the order to retreat. Under the leadership of Marshal Nan Zhengqian, they charged forward fearlessly. However, while they were charging forward, the UMNO alliance's army suddenly retreated like the tide. Several great shamans gathered their troops and retreated while checking their losses. On the other hand, all the higher-ups of the Tao League and Astral Souls, who were above the rank of marshal, were gathered for a meeting. After the war, there were a lot of things to do. The losses caused by the collapse of the other side were unimaginable. The Tao League has to give an explanation for this. Zhuangchang sat on the rostrum, slammed the table, and asked directly, "Who will take the blame for this? Also, how will the human race of astral souls be compensated for their losses? How is it possible for such a mistake to happen? Do the troops of the Tao League eat shit to survive?" The 7 swords of the Tao League were red in the face from the scolding. However, they couldn't say anything to refute it. It was too embarrassing. "Minister, I'm afraid there's something fishy about this. Also, there's something more important that I need to report." Dongfang Jingyang stood up. "Speak." Previously, the demon race had shown signs of returning, but the date of their return was uncertain. Our side, the Tao League, and the UMNO alliance still had some time to prepare. However, after this war, all 3 sides suffered heavy casualties, which caused endless murderous aura to grow and be absorbed by the constellations that appeared before. The murderous aura in the constellations in the North and South Dipper was set, and the demonic aura gradually filled the air, causing the 365 demonic stars in the sky to flicker. I'm afraid that within a few months, the demonic aura emitted by these stars will provide clear coordinates for the demon race drifting outside. Chapter 1205. Everyone was silent. If that was the case, the situation would be much more dangerous. Dongfang Junyang said. As for the anti-air defense line, we still need about half a month to complete it. But the Tao League, I'm afraid it will take a long time. Taoist Thunder gritted his teeth and said, even if we have to sacrifice all our lives, we must complete it. Zhuo Changlu sighed and said, those who made mistakes in this battle, go and build the defense line. Make up for your mistakes. Taoist Thunder stayed silent for a while and said, okay. This was the only way. The mistake this time was too big. If they didn't punish them severely, no one in the 2 continents would be convinced. It would definitely cause a rift in the alliance of the 3 continents, especially the 4 armies of the Astral Souls continent. They might go into a riot. The defense line that they had been guarding for tens of thousands of years was lost in less than half a year, when they started fighting. Many things that were fine before had to be replaced now. Not to mention that so many of their comrades were sacrificed because of their mistakes. If the culprit could still get away with it, then what was the point of fighting? The 7 Taoist masters were all bitter. This time, the number of people the Tao Alliance had to deal with from top to bottom numbered more than 1,000. What was even more terrifying was that it involved 2 Heavenly King stage upper echelons. But looking at the blood in the Sun Moon Fortress, and some places were even covered in blood, they couldn't beg for mercy even if they were beaten to death. Besides, the Sky Patrol Minister wasn't the Flood Witch. If the Tao Alliance didn't deal with these people, or did something half-heartedly, Zhuo Changlu would definitely deal with them personally. That was undeniable. It was something that was inevitable. Next, I'm afraid all of you can't leave. Dongfang Junyang's voice was dry and hoarse. If the 365 heavenly stars formation in the sky is completed, the demonic aura will be fully activated. Because of that, the power of the stars will be unprecedentedly violent. It's so violent that it might shake the entire Sun Moon Fortress. And we don't know when it will happen. With our own strength, we definitely won't be able to suppress this shockwave. After all, the foundation of the Sun Moon Pass and the Sky Restriction Domain was set up with the help of the stars. Dongfang Junyang sighed. The heavenly Tao was indeed terrifying. A sudden change at the border without any reason had actually trapped all of the peak experts here, unable to move even an inch. That night, the Astral Souls, the Tao League, and even the senior magi of the Wu people were all staring at the sky silently, gazing at the stars that had begun to shine in the starry sky. The 365 demonic stars that represented the demonic aura of the demon clan were gradually becoming denser and denser, connecting with each other. This completely showed that the stars in the sky were gradually forming the coordinates to guide the demon's return. However, there was nothing they could do. They could only passively wait. This was because this was the priesthood of the ancient heavenly court, and it possessed the indelible characteristic of dominating the starry sky. As long as these star lords didn't die and their souls didn't perish, the connection between the stars and the star lords couldn't be erased. This was also the sharpness of the ancient demon court. Although countless demon gods had been destroyed during the Great Calamity, as long as a trace of their souls, or even a trace of their aura remained, they wouldn't really die. They could recover and have a chance to make a comeback. However, their enemies didn't have such conditions. Because the demon court was the orthodox force recognized by the heavens and the earth, the so-called main force of the heavens and the earth. Once the demonic aura directly descended, the earth's foundation would be shaken. Therefore, they could only passively wait. Only when the starry demonic aura descended could they disperse it or divert it, so that they wouldn't lose it. However, there was nothing they could do about the coordinates that could form the demon's return. The scene in front of them was actually a microcosm of the Astral Souls continent being hit by countless meteors. No one knew what this indicated or what it meant. Now that the demonic aura coordinates are gradually forming, I'm afraid the Demon Alliance will return at least a year, or even 2 years earlier. Which means, it's very likely that they'll return this year. For the current strength of the 3 continents, this is a disaster. Taoist Thunder looked at the starry sky carefully, and kept sighing. I still don't understand why the people of the Umno Alliance. Why didn't they destroy the North and South Dipper remnants of the demons? Until now they've caused such a big trouble, and become a huge threat. Taoist Thunder wasn't the only one who didn't understand this question. Even Zhuo Changlu didn't understand it. The only turning point for this matter is the heavenly Tao trap in Shangjing. Dongfang Jungyang sighed deeply and said, as long as they can hold on, perhaps the situation won't be so bad. Let's attack both sides together. But we can't go back now. The heavenly Tao has already locked the situation over there. Once we go back and intervene, we'll break the delicate balance that has already been formed. And the heavenly Tao of the demons will have a reason to further stimulate the stars, so that the demons can return sooner. Dongfang Jungyang sighed and said to Zhuo Changlu through telepathy, actually, the accident at the Sun-Moon Pass this time should be a part of the heavenly Tao trap. It wants all the forces that can break the rules to leave this trap. The heavenly Tao has always been like this. We can only accept it passively. It's not easy for us to fight against the heavenly Tao, Zhuo Changlu said blandly. Even if the heavenly Tao is playing tricks on us, it's still not the reason for us to lose the battle, and it can't be the reason for us to escape. More or less, it's one of the reasons. Dongfang Jungyang said in a low voice. I've never liked the heavenly Tao masters in the Tao League, but this time they lost for no reason. Maybe they took the blame for the heavenly Tao trap. What do you mean? Since the heavenly Tao trap has been set up, with the heavenly Tao's nature of not allowing humans to go against it, it will naturally affect the people and things related to it in all aspects. For example, the fluctuation of the spiritual energy tide will correspond to the emotions of a certain period of time, and then it will magnify certain negative emotions without limit, subtly influencing people to make wrong decisions. People who have entered the path of cultivation emphasize on having a firm and peaceful Taoist heart. However, once the Taoist heart is out of balance, the negative emotions of the people involved will suddenly erupt, and the state of mind will definitely take a turn for the worse. These are all conceivable. Speaking of mentality, there are many people in the army, and it has always been the most important thing. If some people are determined to fight to the death at the beginning of the battle, and fight with all their might, the others will be easily influenced. Even if they know that they will die, they will still charge forward without any regard for their own safety. And vice versa. If there are already people running away at the beginning of the battle, then the remaining people will also run away as more and more people run away, no matter how determined they are at the beginning. Compared to the morale, blind obedience is also the most common mentality in the army. And this shows the importance of the old soldiers even more. Why is it that the most precious people in the army since ancient times are the old soldiers? Because the old soldiers dare to fight. And when the old soldiers charge forward, they can lead the new soldiers to quickly grow into old soldiers. Among the three parties, the Umno Alliance and the Astral Souls have been fighting against each other for years. In this kind of long-lasting confrontation, in this kind of iron-blooded life, the number of military talents produced is no less than the number of cultivation geniuses. On the other hand, the army of the Tao League, although they say they are an alliance, in reality, most of the time, they are in the rear. They have very little contact with battles. For this kind of situation to happen, and even for them to be defeated in fact, it is also reasonable. To be fair, I was not optimistic about the military strength of the Tao League. I only considered that the three parties have already formed a hidden alliance, and the Umno Alliance will not be as aggressive as before. No matter how weak the military strength of the Tao League is, after the initial adaptation period, after 1 or 2 years, even if it cannot become a strong force, it can still be used as a reserve force. But reality has proven that I was too optimistic. After experiencing this defeat, Minister, in the future, no matter if we are facing the Demon Clan or the Demon Clan, when we need to engage in a large-scale battle, the army of the Tao League, we have to carefully consider it. If a similar situation occurs again, it will not be the power of a single person or a few people to turn the situation around. Zhuo Changlu sighed deeply. I understand. If the Flood Witch and I had not reached an agreement early on, this battle would not have been so easy. But people with a firm Tao heart will not be affected, or I should say that the impact is relatively small. In the end, this matter is still the fault of the Tao League. If we really attribute it to the heavenly Tao, which of the tens of millions of soldiers will be convinced? I agree with what you said, but the Tao League still has to take responsibility for this and pay the price. Dongfang Xingyang did not speak anymore. He had no intention of exonerating the people of the Tao League. His words were not fair either. His purpose was only to remind Zhuo Chonglu of this matter. As for whether the people of the Tao League died, or how they died, what did it have to do with him? The top masters of the 3 continents had all rushed to the front line during the incident at the Sun Moon Pass. But everyone realized that they could not get away from this matter. This matter could be said to be extremely troublesome. After that, the people who had nothing to do started to open up small battlefields. Every day they would challenge each other. The 12 great shamans appeared frequently. The 7 swords of the Tao League's sword Qi soared into the sky. The leaders of the astral souls also appeared every day. The heavenly kings of the Tao League's Umno Alliance and the astral souls were also frequently challenged. In the end, even the marshals and generals of the various armies started to follow the example of the higher-ups. They challenged the masters of the other armies, who were at a similar level to them. Therefore, the fights were chaotic every day. It was as if they wanted to take action. Once they took action, it would be out of control. The commotion caused by every battle between these people was so great that it almost shook the heavens and the earth. In the eyes of others, both sides were in a situation where they would fight to the death. The scene of the battle was played out every day, causing the mountains to rumble and the earth to tremble. The ordinary warriors were busy repairing the defense line, strengthening the defense line, fighting occasionally, or assisting in the construction of the no-fly zone, that there were many people who liked to watch the show. Every time there was a battle between the higher-ups, they would set up a gambling house and gamble. There were only a few people in the army who did not gamble. Every one of them was a gambler. Everyone was a gambler who risked their lives and did not know if there would be a tomorrow. Who cared about that little bit of money? Many people who gambled would bet their entire fortune. If they won, they would make a fortune. If they lost, they would let their brothers who won get a fortune. Chapter 1206. As for how much they won or lost, they didn't care. Even if they lost and became penniless, they could still borrow money from their comrades. As long as they were still alive, money didn't matter. They fought every day. Every day, there was a huge scene and a huge commotion. However, from the beginning to the end, from top to bottom, not a single person died. However, no one found it strange. They were all the higher-ups of their respective factions, who didn't have a few tricks up their sleeves. It was fine as long as there was a victory. After all, at their level, it would be strange if they died so easily. Everyone understood this logic. Days passed by just like that. This bunch of murderers actually became more and more interested in life. They deeply felt that life was so interesting. This was truly a unique culture and phenomenon of the battlefield, that when the Umno Alliance's army regrouped and charged forward, the other side had already made all the preparations. On the Tao Alliance's side, the officers who made a mistake this time were ordered to contribute to the continent. When they built the no-fly zone, the strangest thing happened. Half of them actually escaped. A total of 300 people, under the lead of a heavenly king, escaped collectively. This matter was simply rubbing the face of the Tao Alliance's 7 swords under the feet of all the experts of the 3 continents. It was a great humiliation. The hot-tempered Taoist Hua was so ashamed that he almost wanted to commit suicide on the spot. I feel that the name Taoist Lightning doesn't sound good, so I changed it to Taoist Hua. Brothers, if you notice that there are areas that need to be changed, please send me a screenshot. The fire sword and cloud sword of the 7 swords acted together and chased after the escapees. In any case, if they didn't catch all of them and bring them to justice, the 2 Taoists felt that they didn't have the face to continue living. On the other side, in Shangjing City, after the tragedy of the Big Dipper killing formation, all the major clans were much quieter. This time, the Battle of Sun Moon Pass caused too much of a commotion. It caused most of the experts of the major clans to go to the front lines. Even the Wang clan sent out 20 Sky Realm experts to the front lines. As a result, the high-end military strength of Shangjing was greatly reduced. However, the originally extreme situation suddenly eased up. Although everyone knew that this easing was the prelude to a volcanic eruption, but at this moment, no one made it clear. It was as silent as water, indifferent and unperturbed. All the clans were secretly accumulating power, preparing for the moment when the thunder would erupt. In the next 2 days, Zhuo Xiaoyan found that Zhuo Xiaoduo behaved very strangely after waking up. Sometimes he would giggle to a chair, sometimes he would mumble to a tree in the yard, and sometimes he would mumble to an ant on the ground. When he met people, he would sometimes be deep in thought, and sometimes frowned out when he had nothing to do. He would go into the Tower of Void Extermination and meditate. He would sit in the Tower of Void Extermination for a few days. Yes, the several days here referred to the time in the tower. After being injured by Li Qinglong and the others, he healed again and again. This cycle repeated over and over again. Zhuo Xiaoduo did not wake up from his meditation, even once. This kind of situation was indeed a little abnormal. After worrying for 2 days, Zhuo Xiaoyan decided to put her worries into action. She decided to stay by Zhuo Xiaoduo's side and observe Zhuo Xiaoduo closely. This strange and inexplicable situation persisted for a few months before it finally improved. Zhuo Xiaoduo returned to his original state. His behavior and actions returned to normal. In fact, Zhuo Xiaoduo's strange behavior during this period of time was naturally not without reason. He had obtained too much inheritance this time. It was so much that it was difficult for him to digest it in a short period of time. However, after a few months of buffering, he slowly straightened it out. The so-called strange behavior and actions naturally did not exist anymore. Speaking of which, Zhuo Xiaoduo's act of merging with the creation plate this time was indeed quite risky. However, this risk was not within the calculations of Zhuo Chonglu, Wu Yuding, or even Zhuo Xiaoduo himself. Zhuo Xiaoduo's parents focused their attention on the possible existence of the remnant soul of the Azure Dragon Sage. All their preparations were based on this aspect. Even Zhuo Xiaoduo himself thought so. However, the real risk of the creation plate did not lie in this at all. Yes, or rather, the so-called danger of the creation plate was actually caused by the creation within it. Of course, it was also a coincidence. This was because he had just received the inheritance from Marshal Dongfang. Previously, Zhuo Xiaoduo had received many jade slips from Marshal Dongfang. This had already caused his brain to be unable to bear the burden. His spirit had already reached its limit. Moreover, he had not had the time to completely digest them. Now that he had suddenly received a huge amount of information from the creation plate, his brain was immediately overloaded. His behavior and actions were not like that of ordinary people. This could be said to be the most basic manifestation of a negative state. If something went wrong, his brain would be completely invaded by the flow of information and collapse. Zhuo Xiaoduo would become a brain-dead living person. Fortunately, Zhuo Xiaoduo had withstood it. Even more fortunately, there was the existence of the Tower of Annihilation, which not only gave Zhuo Xiaoduo a large amount of buffer time to absorb the information and adapt to the state, but it did not really consume a lot of time in the real world. Otherwise, if he had really been in the real world for such a long time, he would have really delayed many important matters. If Zhuo Xiaoduo had really merged with the creation plate before he had ascended to heaven, he would probably have become a mental patient with saliva dripping from the corner of his mouth all day long. And who knew how many years it would take for him to recover. However, this time, Zhuo Xiaoduo had digested the inheritance of the creation plate, and had thus obtained great benefits. The seemingly endless power of the heavenly Tao of primordial chaos had allowed Zhuo Xiaoduo's cultivation to advance by leaps and bounds. In one breath, he had advanced to the mid-level of the sky realm. Another great benefit was that, under the pressure of the power of the heavenly Tao of primordial chaos, Zhu Rong's primordial fire, which had been unruly for a long time, had completely let go of its former pride of being the number one in the world, and had begun to merge with Zhuo Xiaoduo. In the true sense of the word, there was no difference between them anymore. And this situation allowed Zhuo Xiaoduo's cultivation techniques, whether it was the Flaming Sun scripture or the primordial fire art, to take a huge step forward. The improvement this time was a qualitative change. The flaming sun scripture had transformed from a blazing sun to a blazing sun that was right in front of him. After Zhuo Xiaoduo regained his clarity of mind, he didn't immediately continue with his cultivation. Instead, he chose to go to several cities to change his mood and settle his mind. He also collected all the astral soul's jade powder he had collected during this time and stored it in the spatial destruction pagoda. After Bai Yunduo and the demon ancestors' orders, the astral soul's jade powder had been raised to the level of a strategic resource. Not only did they collect a huge amount of it, but they also ensured that it was pure. For the first time, Zhuo Xiaoduo, with his Skysoar realm cultivation, pushed his speed to the limit and quickly went to 7 assembly points. In the end, Zhuo Xiaoduo was so happy that his mouth was crooked. Too much. It was really too much. This was the consumption of the entire astral soul's continent. In the spatial destruction pagoda, Xiao Long was astonished. Boss was really amazing during this time. He had collected more and more of this powder, that the fortune mountain rose from the ground and became wider and wider. Its height had reached an average height of 2,000 meters. This was the average height. It was obvious how great the increase this time was. On the other side, after learning about the outbreak at the front line, Li Chenglong and the others couldn't sit still anymore. They all came to ask Zhuo Xiaoduo about it. They didn't hide their eagerness to fight and were eager to fight. However, after Zhuo Xiaoduo asked Zhuo Changlu, he received a reply. You don't need to be at the front line. You have more important things to do now. The follow-up matters in Shangjing will be handled by you all. Remember, you must win the Heavenly Dao array this time. You must win. Don't be careless. This Heavenly Dao layout is more important than the outcome of the battle at the front line. It's best not to leak a single bit of the Fortune Mountain. Collect all of it. Even if you can't do it, you must collect most of it. Remember, you won't have any foreign aid or support in this battle. We are all at the front line. We can't leave or move. You have full authority to handle it. Zhuo Xiaoduo told Li Chenglong about this matter. Then, he gave Li Chenglong all the relevant speculations, including all the information about the North and South Dipper. After that, Zhuo Xiaoduo didn't care anymore. Li Chenglong was the expert in the specific operations, so he didn't want to add to the trouble. With Swollen around, it was unnecessary for him to worry about it. Swollen, think about it carefully and slowly. We still have enough time. If you don't have enough time, you can go into the spatial destruction pagoda and think about it. You must think about this game thoroughly. You might as well think about the worst situation. Zhuo Xiaoduo said, I'm going out shopping with your sister-in-law. I've been exhausted recently. I need to change my mood. Li Chenglong rolled his eyes and waved his hand, as if he was shooing away a fly. Go change your mood. As long as you don't bother me in front of me, you'll be doing me a great favor. After that, he plunged into the sea of clues. What he liked to do most was to sort out a mess, and even a lot of messy things clearly. He understood everything at a glance. He understood everything clearly. This sense of accomplishment was simply unparalleled, especially when he did something that others couldn't do. It was so satisfying that he couldn't say anything. And Zhuo Xiaoduo's favorite thing to do was, of course, to have fun. He really pulled Zhuo Xiaonian and went shopping. Zhuo Xiaonian was puzzled. Why are you shopping at this time? Aren't you a little too careless? Or are you trying to lure the snake out of its hole? Zhuo Xiaoduo wrinkled his nose and smiled. It's impossible to lure the snake out of its hole now. Even if I pretend to leave Shangjing now, they won't care. Why? Because not only do we have masters on our side, who can see that the Heavenly Dao has been set up, they must have masters in this field who can see the clues. So now they clearly know that I can't leave. If they pay attention to me, it'll be a waste of manpower and physical strength. And there's also the risk of being exposed. So, the only result of luring the snake out of its hole is that it'll waste our energy and won't have any effect. Then although I can't lure the snake out of its hole, it doesn't prevent me from taking the initiative to find the snake. Zhuo Xiaoduo smiled faintly. Taking the initiative to find the snake. Zhuo Xiaonian was very sensitive to the word, taking the initiative. Yes, taking the initiative. Zhuo Xiaoduo smiled mysteriously. In the second stage of the form of heaven and man, What Zhou Xiaoduo comprehended was the form of all things. Speaking of the form of all things, it was a bit awesome. If it was only about fortune and misfortune, then Zhou Xiaoduo's ability to see the trajectory of a person's life had also improved to a considerable extent. Now he could see the life and death of a person within a year. That was not all, but it was just an enhanced version of the original form of heaven and earth. Zhou Xiaoduo's other ability now, the advanced effect of the form of heaven and earth, was on a whole new level. And this advanced effect was that all things had a form, and all things could be seen. The specific effect derived from this could be said to be abnormal. From the initial stage of fortune-telling, it had transformed into the second stage of orders. The true meaning of this was that he would read your fortune and write down orders for your future. If it was right, he would naturally receive providence points, and the orders that had been written would disappear by themselves, turning into ashes at the moment when the divination was accurate. And the consequence of this was that, after divining all the secrets of heaven, there would be no increase or decrease, and there would be no cause and no effect. This was the power of the form of heaven and earth. There was a great taboo in divining someone's fortune and looking at their fortune. As the saying went, one's life would be 3 times thinner after every divination. There was also a saying that if one revealed too many secrets of heaven, they would naturally be punished by heaven. This was because revealing the nature of heaven's secrets was cheating heaven, deceiving heaven, and bullying heaven. Of course, they would be punished by heaven. This was also why, since ancient times, those who were more accomplished in this field could not escape the words of widows, lonely and disabled. And the more brilliant a fortune teller was, the more often they would use some vague, or even specious code when giving a divination. This way, to a certain extent, could weaken the punishment. In the past, when Zhou Xiaoduo wanted to earn providence points and read people's fortunes, he always expressed his thoughts and rarely hid them. If not for this, the karma caused by his flying tribulation would not have been so much. This was also the fundamental reason why even Father Zhou, who had a calm temperament, was shocked. However, with Zhou Xiaoduo's current form of heaven and earth, he no longer had to worry about such repercussions. This was because when an order was turned into ashes, all the karma had nothing to do with him anymore. However, the luck points he obtained would not be reduced at all. This was because this heaven-human form was created by the person who created the world. Even the heavenly axiom had to be grateful to him. Thus, it had to reciprocate the favor of his successor. Otherwise, it would be disregarding karma, and it would be ungrateful. This layer of karma was something that even heaven could not bear. Zhou Xiaoduo first brought Zhou Xiaonian to a printing shop, the kind that mainly produced business cards, and then he placed an order for 9 quadrillion pieces. Since it was an order, he naturally had to make a batch of orders first. This number almost scared the owner of the shop to death. Even though he had repeatedly confirmed the number of 9 quadrillion pieces, the owner still thought that Zhou Xiaoduo had most likely lost his mind. Otherwise, how could he place such an outrageous order? However, Zhou Xiaoduo had no choice. He already had too much money in his hands. So much that he could not spend it all. He was very melancholic. If he did not extravagantly spend it, wouldn't it be wrong? Another helplessness was that this kind of heavenly order could only be done once. The second time he did it, he would have to bear the karma like before. Therefore, Zhou Xiaoduo tried his best to do as much as possible. Just this one order was enough to see through the past and present. In this case, how could Zhou Xiaoduo not take it seriously? Naturally, he would make as much as he could. Originally, he wanted to make 9 quadrillion pieces, but Zhou Xiaoduo felt that he should not be too greedy. I also don't need you to deliver the goods immediately. I placed an order today. You just need to give me a portion of it before tomorrow night. Just a few tens of thousands of pieces will do. Then once every 3 days, I will come to pick up the goods. Or I will send someone to pick up the goods. Except for the first time, the goods delivered each time must not be less than 1 million pieces. I have money, so I don't care about the price. I can give you double the price for each piece, but you have to ensure the quality and quantity. I will pay you 100 million in advance. You can do it and keep on doing it. But no matter how you do it, If there is even the slightest problem with the quality, I will not pay you again. You also have to return the money you received to me. Don't waste time writing a contract. A contract is just a piece of paper. If you take the money and don't do it, or if you don't do it well, I have ways to make you regret it. As Zhou Xiaoduo spoke, he took the iron bar in the shop and slowly twisted it into a fried dough twist. Then, he bent it in his hand and made it into a discus. Then he melted the discus into molten iron. That was not the end. He even evaporated the molten iron that the shop owner was so scared that he almost fainted. He hurriedly agreed. No problem, no problem. Hero, if there is a problem with one piece, you can take my whole family's life. I promise. Zhou Xiaoduo said faintly. The hidden flowers and the words, as well as the surrounding patterns, must not be omitted. The front and back sides must be completely according to the standard. The thickness, etc. The font, etc. 100 million in advance. When I get the goods worth 80 million, I will pay another 100 million in advance, and so on. Remember, money is not a problem. I only want quality and quantity. Do you understand? Yes, yes. The shop owner's panic gradually disappeared. Instead, excitement gradually surged in his heart. He gradually realized that perhaps the highlight of his life had arrived. If everything went well, he did not need to do anything for the rest of his life. He could eat until his belly was round, and he would be rich for generations to come. That was 9 quadrillion pieces. How could he finish it in his lifetime? He estimated that with just this one order, the livelihood of his descendants would be settled. Before he could finish his sweet dream, Zhou Xiaoduo put forward a new condition. The goods I want must all be delivered within 3 years at the latest. That's impossible, hero. The shop owner immediately complained. Your order is too big. No one can finish it in 3 years. Not to mention 3 years, even 300 years. Haven't I made it clear enough? It must be completed in 3 years, Zhou Xiaoduo said. If you can't do it yourself, you can distribute the order to others. Whether you distribute it to 1,000 or 10,000 companies, I don't care. I only ask for quality and quantity. Is that so? The boss thought about it. This matter. As long as it was done properly, it might not be impossible. Apart from having a few more printing machines here, and then distributing the order to all the printing factories in Shangjing, it might not be impossible to finish this business if they put all their efforts into rushing the work. For the same item, the more it was made, the lower the cost would be. Based on the quantity requested by the person in front of him, the cost of one piece was at most 5 cents. His current offer was 15 cents, and the price offered by this hero was double that, which was 30 cents. Based on this calculation, if he distributed the order at 70 cents, the outsourcers would probably fight over it. Don't look at the profit of 2 cents per piece. If he could print millions or tens of millions a day, wouldn't the profit be amazing? The most important thing was that there was no technical content to speak of. Even if he could make 2 cents per piece, if a factory printed 1 million pieces a day, he could easily make 20,000 yuan a day. Moreover, the net profit would go into the shop owner's pocket after deducting all costs. Who wouldn't want to do it? Who wouldn't want money? Those who didn't want to do it were idiots. Even if he were to raise the price to 10 cents per note, he would still be able to earn a huge profit. Okay. The shop owner gritted his teeth. I'll try my best. I don't want you to try your best. I want you to complete it. It's best if you do it ahead of time, Zhou Xiaoduo said. If you complete this order ahead of time, for example, in 2.5 years, then in the following 6 months, no matter how many pieces you make, I'll pay you 3 times the price for the excess. Really? It's a deal. This you don't believe me? Zhou Xiaoduo snorted and directly transferred 100 million yuan. Do you believe me now? The risk is all mine. I only want results. I believe you, I believe you. The shop owner almost fainted. It hadn't even started yet, and 100 million yuan was already on his head. The money was already in his account. What else was there to not believe? Before today, he was just a small shop owner, with a net worth of a few 100,000 yuan. But now, he was a billionaire. Oh my God. Steady. Zhou Xiaoduo snorted. I understand. I'm steady. Steady. Ah ha 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 ha. Steady. Zhuo rolled his eyes. You're so steady that I don't feel safe. Hurry up and get to work. Tomorrow, if I find that you've finished too little, don't blame me for looking for another shop. Understood, boss? Don't call me boss. You're my boss. You're my bread and butter. No, you're my second parent. You're my ancestor. Zhuo rolled his eyes. He couldn't stay any longer. He held hands with Zhuo and disappeared into thin air. Where is he? The shop owner was shocked, but he instantly understood that the person who came was a cultivator. No wonder he made such a big order and didn't take the money at all. He's a land immortal. The shop owner was even more in awe and joy. He immediately turned around and shouted, "Everyone come here. We have 3 minutes for a meeting. We've got a big job. Finish the work at hand and stop all business immediately. Don't accept any more business. All workers' wages will be increased by 20% from the original base. Design department, make a template for this sample as soon as possible. Buyers, go and buy these raw materials immediately. Just these few. There must be no problems with the quality. Give me 5 million sets of shares first. Call the machine manufacturer. I want to negotiate with them. I need a large number of machines. The quality must be excellent. I have all of them. Get to work immediately. Immediately, quickly. As long as everyone works fast, not only will there be a monthly bonus every month, there will be an additional monthly salary allowance every quarter. There will be a half-year bonus every half-year. It will only be given to the group with the best quality and the largest quantity. There will be an annual bonus every year. The minimum is 5,000 and the maximum is 100,000. I will post the specific rules on the wall of the workshop later. Enlarge it. The full attendance bonus will be quadrupled on the basis of the original 200. Listen carefully, it's quadrupled, not doubled. In other words, the monthly full attendance will be 800. For quarterly full attendance and above, the full attendance will be 10,000. Annual full attendance will be 30,000. For those who can't achieve full attendance, only the minimum wage will be guaranteed. Quick. Go quickly. Office, immediately post a recruitment advertisement. Then when the machines arrive, immediately start the shift system. We will implement a 3-shift overtime system. The machines will not stop even if people stop working. The maintenance workers must be the best. Double the salary. Rest for the people and not the machines. Brothers, let's get to work. The day of our fortune has arrived. When the workers of the small company heard the series of orders from the boss, they all rushed out, as if they had been injected with chicken blood. This treatment was really unique in the entire mainland. They had to work as hard as they could. Immediately contact the major printing factories in Shangjing. I want to talk to them about business. Boss Zhou, who had been promoted to a billionaire, was full of confidence. His face was flushed. Now, I am their god of wealth, the child of wealth. Are you really going to hand over such a big business to this boss? Are you so assured? Zhuo looked at Zhuo. Of course I'm assured. How could you forget that I can read people's faces? Zhuo said proudly. This boss has a long lifespan. Second, he is lucky. Third, he is ambitious. Fourth, he is skillful. Fifth, he is good at management. Sixth. All right. I know that there is no mistake. You don't have to say any more. Zhuo rolled her eyes. The two of them chatted and laughed as they walked towards the most prosperous place in Shangjing. The billboards on both sides, the big screens, and all the electronic devices of the businesses were broadcasting the frontline battle reports and all kinds of recruitment news. That's why Duo raised his head, as if he was curious about everything. In fact, he had a panoramic view of the fates of everyone who had passed by, and he had seen them all. Although it was like looking for a needle in a haystack, Zhuo really wanted to try. He wanted to see if he could use his own ability to uncover the opponents who were hiding behind the scenes. What if he really met one? It had to be said that Zhuo was very optimistic. In fact, there were many coincidences in history where people waited for their prey to appear. But Zhuo's luck was obviously not as good as he had imagined. He looked around for a long time, but he still did not get anything. After a while, Zhuoxiaoduo's eyes turned and he said, Nian Mao, where do you want to go? I will follow you. After a long time, he suddenly thought of something. In the entire continent of astral souls, it seemed that no one was luckier than Zhuoxiaonian. Since he did not find anything, he would use Nian Mao. Chapter 1207. Zhuoxiaoduo was suddenly excited. If he followed Zhuoxiaonian around, he might be able to gain something. Follow me? Zhuoxiaonian was stunned. Since when did I become the one in charge? What is going on now? Yes, now it's my turn to follow you. Zhuoxiaoduo chuckled. Maybe if I follow you, I'll be able to find the Southern Dipper or Northern Dipper or whatever. How could there be such a coincidence? Zhuoxiaonian snorted, but she could not help but think along the lines of this question. Could it be that I've really met it? The two continued to stroll around. Zhuoxiaonian initially thought that looking for someone was a big deal, but after thinking about it, she felt that relying on luck was too unreliable. Gradually, she stopped thinking about it and just strolled around for the sake of shopping. Subconsciously, she leaned towards the clothing store. Girls, well, ladies, no matter how many clothes they had, they would always subconsciously feel that they were lacking clothes. The clothes displayed in the display window were the ones that suited them the most. The clothes that made their eyes light up were the ones that suited them the most. In short, they were always lacking a set of clothes in their wardrobe. It was either this set or that set. However, Zhuoxiaonian was different from other women. She was the type who only looked and did not buy. She only looked at the style and took a few photos. For Zhuoxiaonian, it was already equivalent to owning something. This situation caused the employees of the clothing store to look at Zhuoxiaoduo with disdain. What a pity that such a handsome boy is actually a pauper. He had such a beautiful girlfriend, but he did not have the money to buy clothes for her. He could only ask her to take a photo. Finally, the two of them looked passable. The man was handsome, the woman was beautiful, and their temperament was outstanding. The shop assistants did not make any sarcastic remarks, which made Zhuoxiaoduo feel that it was a pity. Sir System had lost a lot of opportunities to show off. Sir System had the most money now, the kind that could never be used up. Initially, he had thought that if someone mocked him and someone understood him, he would buy the shop and gift it to the person who didn't mock him. Then, he would fire the person who mocked him on the spot. It would be a great opportunity for him to show off. Who would have thought that he wouldn't get the chance to do so? Depressing. I moneybags have nowhere to spend my money. Life is as lonely as a flower. After walking around for about an hour, Zhuoxiaoduo finally encountered something. In front of him, little Hero Yu was wearing a large white windbreaker that covered his slightly plump and round body. His head was held high as he strode over with a large sword. Boss! Boss! From afar, Xiao Xia was already shouting excitedly. His voice was so loud that it attracted the attention of passers-by. Zhuoxiaoduo subconsciously wanted to turn around and leave. Why did he have to meet this little fatty every time he went out? What kind of luck was this? Naturally, he didn't know that Xiao Xia had been paying attention to him every day since he came to the capital. Not to mention when he was at home. But whenever Zhuoxiaoduo went out for a stroll, or was discovered by someone, Xiao Xia would be the first to get the news and immediately come over to bump into him. Yo, little fatty. Zhuoxiaoduo squinted his eyes. He felt uncomfortable all over. After Zhuoxiaoduo found out that he was a genuine second-generation cultivator, but had no hope of winning in life, and could only continue to struggle, he couldn't help but feel more and more that this guy who had an unknown number of generations lived a much more comfortable life than him. A pure second-generation cultivator. Regarding this point, it was simply intolerable. Even if the uncle could tolerate it, the aunt couldn't. The worst thing was that Zhuoxiaoduo felt that he had made a mistake. He had brought this upon himself, and raised Xiao Xia's seniority to his own. This made Zhuoxiaoduo extremely unhappy. Originally, it wasn't enough for this guy to call him ancestor. But now, because Emo Xuanyi and Zhuoxiaonian had become sworn brothers, on the day of their wedding, he would have to call him brother-in-law? He would have to call him brother-in-law all the time. Fuck. It was simply a huge loss, alright. Originally, He only wanted to help Emoshwani, but in the end, this brat benefited from it. The more Xiaoduo thought about it, the angrier he became. Boss, ha ha. Are you shopping with sister-in-law? Xiaoxia smiled brightly. Xiaoduo snorted. How are you and Shwani now? Xiaoxia laughed, his face full of happiness. Thanks to boss, we're progressing very quickly, ha ha ha. Xiaoxia had completely forgotten about what happened that night. All his memories had been erased. The only thing he remembered was that Emoshwani had become a godfather, and he had left early. However, he couldn't remember why he had left. Then, as if it was the new year, the Yu family began to buy things wantonly, preparing for the engagement. When he went to find Emoshwani was no longer as cold as before. This situation made Xiaoxia indescribably happy. These days, he felt like he was living in heaven, and even his steps were light. You're progressing very quickly? Xiaoduo became more and more unhappy, his face dark. Then you're living quite comfortably now. It's just SOSO, ha ha ha. Xiaoxia said happily. As for me, I don't have any great ambitions. I'll just eat and wait for death, be a salted fish. That's enough. The Yu family doesn't need me to do anything. Eat and wait for death. Be a salted fish. Xiaoduo suddenly felt like 10,000 mythological beasts were roaring and galloping through his heart. This is clearly my fucking dream. Even I can't live a dreamy life. And you, little fatty, are already living such a wonderful life. Is there any justice in this world? Is there any justice in this world? Is there any justice in this world? This is simply too unfair. Xiaoduo's face darkened, and he gritted his teeth. My father said that the future head of the Yu family, little fatty, can't get married if his cultivation base can't reach the Skysoar realm. We will never agree to such an unsuitable marriage. Xiaoxia's face instantly paled, and he cried out involuntarily. Are you serious, boss? I'm only at the advanced cloud transformation stage. You're so useless. Xiaoduo said viciously. Xianyi is already at the God Imperial tier. And you're only at the cloud transformation stage? How can you be worthy of Xianyi? Xiaoxia was on the verge of tears. Did Godfather really say that? Godfather. This title caused Xiaoduo's heart to feel stifled. He continued to spitefully say, why would I lie to you? My father originally said that you're not allowed to get married until you reach the Dao integration stage. It was all thanks to big sister Nian's help that he changed it to the Skysoar realm. With your shallow background, you want to marry the daughter of the Zhou family? What right do you have if you don't even have a decent cultivation base? Xiaoxia's fat jiggled, and his face was completely pale. Skysoar realm. Xiaoxia might not even be able to reach the Skysoar realm in this lifetime, let alone make a breakthrough in the near future. That was a realm that he had never even thought about. Wouldn't it be great to just eat and drink and win in life? Why do I have to break through to the Skysoar realm? This is simply making things difficult for me, Xiaoxia. Can you make an exception? Xiaoxia looked as if he had lost his parents. No. Is this true, sister-in-law? Xiaoxia looked at Zhuo Xiaonian with tears in his eyes. It's true. Zhuo Xiaonian nodded honestly. Of course, what Zhuo Xiaoduo said was true. Even if it was fake, it could still be true. At the very most, he could come forward and tell his father that he would help cover up Xiaoduo's lie. In any case, he could not embarrass his brother. A man's reputation was very important to him. This was the experience that his mother had imparted to him. It must be true, and it must be a saying of wisdom. Xiaoxia did not feel good. He felt as if the sky had darkened. That he knew very well that his good days were about to be over. While he was shopping with Zhuo Xiaoduo and Zhuo Xiaonian, Xiaoxia's head drooped. He did not say a word, and he looked as if he was about to cry. Zhuo Xiaoduo was suddenly jolted awake. A few hundred meters ahead, a young man was striding over with a determined look on his face. Behind him, a young girl was chasing after him with tears on her face. Finally, she flew over and stopped him. With a sorrowful look, she said, I know I was wrong. Why can't you forgive me? It was a quarrel between a young couple. The young man's expression was sorrowful and cold. It's over between us. It's really my first time. So what? Society is so open-minded now. Can't you accept it? Didn't I make a mistake just once? You're such a narrow-minded man. I'll accept everything that happened before you met me. However, I won't forgive you for anything that happened after you met me. It's that simple. Have you forgotten our vow? It's no longer important. But you know that I love you the most. But that's not a reason for you to get a room with someone else. The young man looked sorrowful. It's over. Move aside. If you don't forgive me, I'll die in front of you. The young girl pulled out a knife with tears flowing down her face and placed it across her neck. Xiao Nian laughed bitterly. It's not that I don't forgive you. It's just what? The young man did not answer. He suddenly turned around and bought a piece of fragrant barbecued meat from a stall. The young girl thought that he was going to coax her. She could not help but look expectant. Is this meat fragrant? Is it a good piece of meat? The young man asked. Yes, it's delicious. The young man turned around and walked to the side of the street. He stretched out his hand and handed it to a stray dog lying there. The dirty stray dog bit it into its mouth. However, the young man immediately snatched the piece of meat back from the dog's mouth. There were 2 bite marks on it. They were all dog saliva. The dog was furious, but the young man kicked it away. This is still the same piece of meat. Do you want to eat it? The young man handed the meat to the young girl. Aren't you disgusting? It's covered in dog saliva. The young girl looked at the piece of meat in disdain and said angrily, So you understand how I feel? The young man said indifferently, It's not that I don't forgive you. I just feel disgusted. Then, he raised his hand and threw the piece of meat to the dog. Such a commotion naturally did not attract Swordsmanship. However, he stopped and watched with relish. Because of the black aura disaster on the young man's face, and the future news that Swordsmanship saw, he immediately stopped in his tracks. Jin Yunxing will die at the hands of Granny Greedy Wolf 5 days later. Chapter 1208. Xiao Duo couldn't help but click his tongue as he gazed at the young man called Jin Yunxing. Women are truly terrifying. However, after listening to their argument, Swordsmanship had already relied on his handsome and unrestrained IQ to imagine the entire process and plot, and he'd understood the ins and outs of the matter, and even the details. It was even to the extent that he'd imagined over 100,000 words of adultery scenes, characters, actions, and so on. However, the other side was still going on. But I was deceived as well. I didn't know in advance. You weren't deceived when you agreed to go out for a drink with him alone. But you have no background, no extraordinary strength, no connections, no brains, and no money. Why would he ask you out for a drink? Why would he invite you out for a meal every day? Besides your face and body, what else do you have that could attract that sort of person? So long as you tell me one, I'll consider you a victim. But when you agreed to dinner with him, it was equivalent to accepting his hint in the eyes of a man. Thus, everything that happened after that was only natural. It was all within reason. From that moment onwards, we had nothing to do with each other. You can be unfaithful once, but you can't be unfaithful 100 times. I won't accept an affair, not even once. At this moment, Jin Yunxing's eyes were filled with pain and heartache, but he didn't struggle. I don't care about your past, and I've never asked about your relationship with me. Even if you've gone through all sorts of hardships in the past, I only ask that you don't embarrass me in this aspect after we're together. That's enough. Even if you come to me after you've had your fun, so long as you don't play with me again, I can still accept it and acknowledge it. For the sake of the person I love, I'll accept being a spare tire. But you've never cared about me. The so-called promises you made to me were just empty words. Even if I forgive you this time, there'll be a next time, and a next time. It's better to get the pain over with than to prolong the pain. Let's end this. Perhaps you'll feel guilty and blame yourself, but after a short period of guilt, you'll still do as you please. As for me, I'll have to wear a green hat for the rest of my life. This kind of thing, once is already too much. Jin Yunxing strode away. The young woman wailed as she tugged at his sleeve. With a ripping sound, his sleeve was torn apart, and Jin Yunxing instantly vanished into the crowd. The young girl watched as Jin Yunxing walked away with tears in her eyes. The hope in her eyes turned into despair and gloominess. After that, it was replaced by insane hatred. I hate you, the girl roared. Just you wait. She abruptly turned around and left while crying. The ranger turned to Zhuo. Zhua, why don't you let me teach that shameless woman a lesson? Just now, the ranger was about to intervene, but was stopped by Zhuo. It's not worth it. Zhuo shook his head. Actually, it wasn't that it wasn't worth it. It was because what the woman was about to do was related to Jin Yunxing's life and death. As for Jin Yunxing, how shameless. She cheated on her own man, and still has the face to resent her own man for abandoning her. I'm very curious. Why doesn't she hate the man who abducted her? On what basis? The ranger was indignant. I despise this kind of woman the most. It's just a social phenomenon. There's no need to be so angry. Zhuo sneered. In life, everyone has their own way of living. Everyone has their own encounters, that's all. Anyway, I just can't stand it. I won't stand it no matter what. Bear with it. They strolled for a while more. Seeing that it was getting late, they found a place to have a simple meal. After the meal, the ranger left with a heavy heart. Before he left, he sent Zhuo a document. It contained the movements of the major families in the capital during this period, including the changes in personnel, and the corresponding movements. Zhuo didn't even look at it, and directly forwarded the content to Li Chenglong. Li Chenglong sent a message, Roger that. Zhuo didn't care about it anymore. He continued to follow his divine perception, and searched with Zhuo. Before Jin Yunxing left just now, Zhuo had already placed a wisp of divine perception on him. This was an important clue. How could he not keep a close eye on it? Jin Yunxing, male, 22 years old, was framed by his girlfriend 5 days later. When he escaped, he encountered Granny Greedy Wolf, who was hiding in a secret place, and was killed for no reason. This information was actually very general, because the location, time, and process of the incident were all missing. There was almost only one outcome. However, this was the only clue at the moment. Fortunately, one outcome was enough. As long as they kept a close eye on him, they could follow the clues and find Granny Greedy Wolf. Jin Yunxing returned to his rented house, closed the door, and sat down. He was dejected. He covered his face with both hands, and tears had already surged out from between his fingers. His girlfriend's aura still lingered in the rented house. As a low-level cultivator, he came to Shangjing to make a living. He worked hard every day to find a job, and he worked hard every day just to give her a foreseeable future. He hoped that one day, he would put on a white wedding dress for her, that he had even thought about what to do with his wedding house in the future. He would pay a mortgage and buy a smaller house in a more remote location. Then, when he had children, he would change to another house depending on the conditions. As for the children's education, raising, and so on. He had thought very far ahead. He had even thought about how he would retire when he was old. However, the idea was beautiful, but the reality was cruel. His girlfriend's betrayal this time shattered all his blueprints. The phone kept ringing, but he didn't pick it up. It was as if the world was meaningless to him. He didn't know how long he had been in a daze. It was only when the sky had darkened that he stood up like a zombie. He opened the fridge and took out 2 packets of instant noodles. Only then did he remember that he was the only one left. 1 packet was enough. He didn't know how this bowl of noodles tasted. He suddenly thought of his parents who were far away, and couldn't help but let out a deep sigh. It wasn't that he didn't want to die, but he really didn't dare to die. Even if he was betrayed, he still had to live his life. He casually ate 2 mouthfuls to fill his stomach. Looking at the narrow rented house, he suddenly thought of the stray dog on the street just now. My life is really not as good as that dog's. At least that dog doesn't have to be so tired, and it doesn't have to bear so much. It doesn't have so many emotions to face. It's actually true that humans are worse than dogs. Zhuo located Jin Yunxing's location. He didn't stay for too long, and left with Zhuo. Zhuo knew that Jin Yunxing would only suffer misfortune in 5 days. Because of fate, extreme misfortune will bring joy. At that time, I might as well give him a chance, Zhuo thought. Zhuo had never been a good person. However, He truly felt that Jin Yunxing was rather decisive and straightforward when it came to matters. Even though he was in excruciating pain right now, he'd made a prompt decision when he decided to give up just now, and he hadn't hesitated at all. Zhuo Xiaoduo admired this kind of character very much, at least as a man. He wasn't a coward. When they returned to the small courtyard, they were surprised to see Lu Yingfeng and Madame Lu sitting in the living room. Li Chenglong was chatting with them while Xiang Bing was making tea and preparing dinner. Patriarch Lu and Madame Lu were always kind when facing Zhuo Xiaoduo and the others. They missed their daughter, so they came to see their daughter's students. Now that everything was clear, Madame Lu couldn't wait to bring Zhuo Xiaoduo and the others into the Lu family, so that she could watch over them every day. These children were her daughter's blood, sweat, and tears. Her daughter had placed her hopes on them. That night, Patriarch Lu and Madame Lu didn't stay for long. After dinner, Lu Yingfeng pulled the reluctant Madame Lu away. After that, everyone had nothing else to do, so they all entered the spatial extermination tower to cultivate. Everyone's cultivation was on the fast track. Everyone had just broken through to the Skysoar realm, so they didn't need to do anything else now. They only needed natural treasures and cultivation materials to aid their cultivation and improve their cultivation. That was all. All kinds of eating, swallowing, absorbing, and sucking. This kind of fast track would continue until they reached the Tao convergence stage. Of course, every time he absorbed the spiritual energy, he would have to temper it 1,000 times before he could transform it into a state that was most compatible with the Skysoar realm. It was one thing to advance by leaps and bounds, but it was also necessary to strengthen one's foundation. Their current demand for the Jade of Astral Souls had reached the level of high-grade Astral Souls Jade. Generally, mid-grade or low-grade Astral Souls Jade would turn into powder in a second. However, it was more or less useless. It would be best if they could directly use top-grade Astral Souls Jade to aid their cultivation. However, top-grade Astral Souls Jade was simply too rare in this world. It was truly a scarce resource, so Xiaoduo naturally didn't lack it. However, the resources he had on hand were far from enough for the needs of so many people. He had to purchase them elsewhere. At such a time, Zhuo Xiaoduo's background as a second-generation superpower was put to good use. He found a number that Wu Yuding had secretly left for him and dialed it. "Is this Uncle Ding? I'm Zhuo Xiaoduo. MHM. My mother said that my father once said that Uncle Ding is a good person. Uncle Ding, you're too kind. It's actually nothing much. It's just that there's a huge shortage of top-grade Astral Souls Jade for cultivation. We want to buy some." "That won't do. We definitely have to pay. Otherwise my mother will hit me. We the Zhuo clan do things openly and honestly. How can we take advantage of our own people?" Okay. Thank you very much, Uncle Ding. As for how much you need, anyway, we need a lot. The more the better." "Okay. Thank you, Uncle Ding." On the other hand, Zhuo Xiaoyan also began to make calls. "Pavilion Master, do we still have top-grade Astral Souls Jade in the Nine Heavens Pavilion? We want to purchase some, but we don't have enough materials for cultivation." "Thank you, Pavilion Master. There's no need for that. We have to pay normally, or we can use resources to exchange for them. My points are that high. I can exchange them for top-grade Astral Souls Jade?" Zhuo Xiaoyan was stunned. "My contribution is that high." Chapter 1209. Zhuo Xiaoyan was really dumbfounded by the information on the other end of the phone. Her points at the Nine Heavens Pavilion could actually be exchanged for more than 3,000 pieces of top-grade Jade of Astral Souls? So much? When did she make such a huge contribution? This was definitely an unexpected surprise. Zhuo Xiaoduo then called the Ministry of Finance. "Is this Minister Yang?" "Haha, I'm Zhuo Xiaoduo. Uncle Nan asked me to ask you for help." "You're too polite. Well, if you have time, come over to my house with Uncle Nan. My mother's cooking is really delicious. I'll definitely give you a portion in advance for the next family feast." Not long after, Li Chenglong and the others were dumbfounded when a large batch of high-quality Jade of Astral Souls was sent over. He didn't know how the news spread, but the Yu clan, Dongfang clan, and Nan clan all sent Star Soul Jades over. Each of them sent 10,000 pieces, and they even said in a forthright manner, "There's plenty. Send more in a few days." Money, resources? No need, no need. These things have been stored at home for a long time. This time, just treat it as clearing out the storeroom. There's not enough left. It's really like that. The patriarch said that if we still accept money for these things, he'll break our legs when we get back. Zhou Xiaoduo was very surprised by this situation. Was this the authority of the second generation of super cultivators? It was really too easy to get these things. Previously, when Hidden Dragon High School's principal Yi wanted to buy the top-grade jade of astral souls, he couldn't find it no matter how hard he begged. One piece cost hundreds of millions, but now, with just a call, tens of thousands of pieces were sent over. And they didn't even ask for money. It was as if they were afraid that he wouldn't accept it. Oh my god. I really love this identity of mine. After sending away a bunch of people who were sent the top-grade jade of astral souls, because they wanted to clear out the storeroom, Zhou Xiaoduo clapped his hands. Come all of you. I have something for you. Not only was there a top-grade jade of astral souls, there was also something else. This time, it was definitely something that could save his life. It's equivalent to each of you having 20 extra lives. Do you understand? Then he gave each of the 12 people a piece of paper. I don't need to tell you what you should do next, right? Come on, let's do it quickly. Li Chenglong was the most cooperative. Without another word, he immediately began to write. An IOU. An IOU. Today I owe Zhou Xiaoduo. At this point he looked up and asked, how much is appropriate? Zhou Xiaoduo rolled his eyes and said, set your own price. It's fine as long as you know the price. As the boss, how can I be less than you? What I want is your attitude. Do you understand? Li Chenglong considered for a moment, and then continued to write. Understood. Today I owe Zhou Xiaoduo 10 continents. Empty words have no proof. I'll write it down as proof. Heaven above be my witness. I won't go back on my word. I'll definitely pay it back in this lifetime. Li Chenglong. Year, month, day. Then he signed and pressed his fingerprints. The series of actions flowed smoothly. Long Yuxing then began to write. An IOU. Today, I owe Zhou Xiaoduo 20 continents. Long Yuxing 1 Li Xiu year, month, day. With the first 2 sets of models, Gao Qiao, and the others also imitated them, as if they were imitating a bowl. Thus, in an instant, Zhou Xiaoduo's IOU increased by 120 continents. Well, in addition to the previous debt, you now owe me a total of 200 continents. Remember to pay it back when you need it. Zhou Xiaoduo exhorted. Don't worry. I'll definitely pay it back in this lifetime. Well, it doesn't matter if you remember it or not. I'll remember it anyway. Zhou Xiaoduo nodded, and put away the stack of IOU carefully. Then, he began to distribute the best quality jade of astral souls. Everyone was beaming with joy. To be able to obtain so many high-quality resources, with just an IOU was a great thing. How could such a good thing happen a few more times? 3 to 5 times a day, or even 8 to 10 times a day, it would never be too much. Although everyone had such dirty thoughts, everyone's feelings for Zhou Xiaoduo were the most sincere. It could be seen from the ownership of the heart-cleansing sacred fruit and the heart-cleansing sacred fruit tree. Whether the content of the IOU was outrageous or not was one thing. When they had the ability in the future, they would have to pay it back. When they encountered something good, they would not forget to share a share with Swadat. Everyone was prepared for this as well. However, they would never have thought that the world was unpredictable and the universe was unpredictable. At a certain time in the future, when they had achieved great success and laughed at all the heroes, these promissory notes would become a nightmare that they could not get rid of for the rest of their lives. At that time, Zhou Xiaoduo would waive the IOU and collect a wave of interest on a whim. After a period of time, he would collect another wave of interest. This made them, who had reached the peak of the world, rack their brains to avoid debt, and rack their brains for the IOU. It had to be said that every bird and peck had its own destiny. Ahem. This was something that would happen in the distant future. They would talk about it when they needed it in the future. In short, they were very happy to be free now. When they were liquidated in the future, that the result would be clear. What's the use of collecting so many IOU? Zhuo Xiaoyan was very curious. She looked at the thick stack of IOU in Zhuo Xiaoduo's hands and saw that there were as many as 13 IOU from Li Chenglong. Long Yuxing and Wan Lixio were second, and Yu Moyan and Li Changming were third. Except for Jin Piao, who joined the group the latest, who only had 1 IOU. The rest had at least 2 in their accounts. I have my own use, Zhuo Xiaoduo chuckled. If everyone can't reach the end, it doesn't matter. But if everyone can reach the end, well, we can refer to Uncle Nan and Uncle Wu for specific examples. In the future, we husband and wife, our whole family, will be able to eat a lot just by collecting interest for generations. Zhuo Xiaoyan. You are thinking so far ahead. Zhuo Xiaoduo's method was naturally not taught to him by Zhuo Changlu. Zhuo Changlu did not tell him about this at all. These were the unique skills that Zhuo Xiaoduo had comprehended on his own to walk the Jianghu. At the same time, on the other side, in front of the Sun-Moon Pass, Zhuo Changlu looked at Yu Xingqian, Yu Dongtian, Dongfang Jingyang, Sword Monarch, Saber Demon, and the others. His face was full of smiles as he took out a stack of IOU from his spatial ring. Do you still remember these IOU? Now that we have nothing to do, and you have saved up for so many years, shouldn't you settle the interest first? As the saying goes, a half-grown child eats the father until he is poor. I am raising 2 children now, and the living pressure is very high. You don't know how much it costs to raise a pair of children. The 2 of us can't bear the burden now, and I need you to repay us. Hearing this, everyone's eyeballs bulged in unison. How many years had it been since that happened? You still keep these IOU? Is this something that a human can do? Is this something that a Sky Patrol minister should do? Where is his shame? Where is his dignity? The distortion of human nature? The decay of morality? Raising a pair of children can force the Sky Patrol minister to this extent? We trust you so much. Don't talk nonsense with me. Quickly settle the amount that everyone owes. After this round of settlement, remember to write a new IOU after today's settlement. Zhuo Changlu smiled. I have newly obtained the heaven-nourishing jade. I will distribute it to all of you later, but I have to make it clear in advance that this is an important strategic resource. Not only can it not be used freely, but it is also strictly forbidden for anyone other than us to use it. Once it is used up, it will be gone. Do you understand? As Zhuo Changlu explained what the heaven-nourishing jade was, everyone's eyes lit up like light bulbs. The heaven-nourishing jade was really a good thing. Even if one's heart was crushed or his dantian was destroyed, it could recover in a few seconds. This was the greatest blessing on the battlefield, a treasure that defied the natural order. Nan Zhengqian. Yu Dongtian waved his hand. What? Nan Zhengqian was a little puzzled. Come here. Yu Dongtian was all smiles. What's the matter? Nan Zhengqian walked forward in confusion. Poof! Yu Dongtian suddenly raised his fist and smashed Nan Zhengqian's dantian into a pulp. Blood immediately splattered. A tragedy suddenly unfolded before their eyes. Nan Zhengqian screamed, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets. Let's test it out. Yu Dongtian stuck his heaven-nourishing jade on Nan Zhengqian's body. 5 seconds later, Nan Zhengqian recovered completely. He was completely at his peak. Not even a wound was left behind. If it wasn't for the large pool of blood on the ground, no one would believe that Nan Zhengqian had just suffered a fatal injury. What a treasure! Yu Dongtian played with the heaven-nourishing jade in his hand lovingly. Nan Zhengqian was furious. Yu Dongtian, you son of a bitch! He finally understood. Yu Dongtian was clearly taking revenge on him for watching him make a scene. Otherwise, of all people, he just had to use him as an experiment. Why didn't he look for Dongfang Jingyang? He turned around and saw that Dongfang Jingyang had already run in front of Zhuo Changlu and started to write an IOU. He looked straight ahead, as if he didn't see anything. He really came back from the dead. Oh my God! Everyone was instantly excited. They all gathered around to calculate the debt and repay the interest. Zhuo Changlu had clearly stated that those who had not paid the interest previously did not have the right to write an IOU for the heaven-nourishing jade. He was just so unyielding, just like a scoundrel. Wu Yuding was at the side collecting the debt. Other than cash and transfers, she wanted everything. She stopped and put on a fake smile. That's it. Hence, those who were asked quickly took out a large sum of money. When it was Qin Sha's turn, there was finally a problem. Wu Yuding looked at the things that Qin Sha took out and put on a fake smile. Haha, that's it. Qin Sha was so angry that her face turned green and white. Teardrop, don't go overboard. What do you want? Wu Yuding rolled her eyes. Qin Sha turned around and said to Zhuo Changlu, Brother Zhuo, I've been waiting for you. Now it's normal for powerful people to have multiple wives. I don't ask you to give me any status. I'm willing. Wu Yuding was shocked. She immediately kept the things and put on a smiling face. Aunt Qin. Okay, I've collected enough interest. Chapter 12:10. This is enough? Qin Sha glanced at her. I don't think it's enough. It's enough, it's more than enough. Wu Yuding quickly took out a portion, at least half of it, and pushed it back to Qin Sha. Haha, I don't need so much. Take these back. She sounded a little submissive. This was Wu Yuding's first time in so many years. So much. Yes. At least you know what's good for you. Wu Yuding was so angry that her whole body was trembling, but she did not dare to say anything. I've never seen anyone who wants to be a mistress so arrogant in front of the main wife. But I can't provoke her. Originally, she wouldn't take action because of her status. If I provoke her, she might as well take action regardless of the consequences. That would be bad. And I can have a legitimate reason. If the main wife says that I don't dare, then I'll do it for her. No matter what, Wu Yuding would never give him such a chance. Even if I have to suffer a little. On the other side, Zhuo Changlu's face was also pale, and his eyes were a little blue. I'm scared to death, scared to death. Finally, Qin Sha finished paying the interest. She went to Zhuo Changlu and stretched out her hand. Zhuo Changlu thought for a while, and hesitantly handed over a piece of paper. He coughed. Sign an IOU? Huffed at the paper suddenly burned in Qin Sha's hand. It turned into ashes. Qin Sha pursed her lips. Her eyes and expression were cold. Her eyes were like knives, swords, and spears. Her meaning was clear. I already want to be your concubine, and you still want me to sign an IOU? Do you believe that I'm serious? Zhuo Changlu turned to look at Wu Yuding in panic. Wu Yuding turned her face away and pretended not to see. Zhuo Changlu's face twitched. He quickly chose a thicker piece and placed it in Qin Sha's hand. Leave quickly. I'm going to be killed by you. Qin Sha took the heaven-nourishing jade and left with her head held high. Little guy, do you think I can't teach you two a lesson? You actually want to bully me. Do you really think I want to be your man's concubine? The Qin Sha, am definitely not that kind of person. Tears, look at how scared you are. Auntie won't snatch it from you. This was the first time that the heaven-inspecting minister couple had suffered a setback. Zhuo Changlu heaved a sigh of relief. He could feel his heart throbbing. He could clearly feel that tonight would not be an easy night for him, even in the future. It would be very difficult, very difficult, very difficult. Oh my God, this is really an undeserved calamity. Poochie poochie. The laughter around them, which they tried to hold back, but failed to do so, rang out. Zhuo Changlu's face was as red as a jujube. He glanced around coldly. The laughter that wasn't loud in the first place suddenly stopped. The next one was Shimin Lai. With a fawning look on his face, he said, Boss. I want to write an IOU. You only know how to write IOUs. What else can you do? Can't you be more mature? Zhuo Changlu immediately found a target to vent his anger on. He said angrily, Can't you use real money? What have you been doing all your life? What kind of achievements can you have? What hope do you have? How could I have been so blind to give you so many resources? I even asked you to sign an IOU. When will you be able to pay it back in your lifetime? What kind of achievements do you have? What hope do you have? How could I have been so blind to give you so many resources, and even let you write an IOU? Shimin Lai was dumbfounded. Just now, everyone wrote an IOU, but you didn't say anything. How come when it came to me the people around him held back their laughter and urged, Hurry up! What are you being so shy for? Shimin Lai was embarrassed. He said in a low voice, But I really can't take it out right now. If you can't take it out, then go away. Quick. The others became even more noisy. Shimin Lai's face turned the color of a persimmon. He was at a loss and looked extremely pitiful. Finally, it was Yu Xingqian who stood up to smooth things over. He wrote an IOU and got the heaven-mending stone as he wished. After giving out 15 heaven-mending stones, Zhuo Chonglu hurriedly announced, "There's no more." Basically, each army gets one. The left and right heavenly kings get one each. The demonic sword monarch, demon ancestor and others get one each. The emperor gets two. The others don't get this treatment. This is a strategic treasure. Moreover, everyone here is well versed in the creation of heaven and earth. Even if this treasure is profound, it is still rootless and limited. I don't know how many people can be saved with one stone, but it can't be used without limit. It's up to you to decide how to use it. I won't ask how you should use it, and where you should use it. But don't pester me again. I don't have any more on hand. Zhuo Chonglu's voice was very heavy. Everyone understood that the IOU was written, and they got the good stuff. However, their shoulders became heavier and heavier. With this thing, there was no doubt that they had more confidence to save their lives. However, soldiers valued camaraderie the most. No one wanted to see their comrades die, so that the marshals could already foresee that after every battle, the armies would carry many heavily wounded and dying soldiers to them and kneel on the ground, begging for their lives. "Commander, save him. I know you have elixirs that can prolong his life and bring him back to life. Commander, please have mercy. Marshal, this is our comrade in arms. Commander, please." When they thought of this scene, the four commanders felt that the heaven-mending stone in their hands was a little hot. How many people could it save with such a thin piece? If they were allowed to use them freely, they would probably be used up in a small skirmish. Therefore, this kind of heaven-defying treasure would definitely have side effects. Therefore, there really needed to be a rule on how to use this thing. In addition, it had to be strictly enforced. I've said everything I wanted to say. The severity of the matter is up to you. Disperse. Zhuo Chonglu felt that it was necessary for him to drive everyone away quickly. He already felt that his wife's coldness was getting thicker and thicker. The moment everyone scattered like birds and beasts, Zhuo Chonglu heard Wu Yuding's cold voice. "Come with me. Xiao Duo's mother. It's not my fault. I didn't have any opinion at all." Zhuo Chonglu's face was bitter. "What you said is not the main point. Come here." Wu Yuding pulled Zhuo Chonglu and disappeared without a trace. This caused the people who seemed to have left, but were actually waiting not far away to watch the gossip, to be greatly disappointed. What a tragedy. Yu Dongtian shook his head, his face full of schadenfreude. Right now, only the frivolous heavenly king of the right would be so audacious and unrestrained as to say what everyone else wanted to say, but did not dare to. Even his father, Monarch Shaixing, might not have such courage. However, there was a price to pay for such courage in action. Before the heavenly king of the right could finish his sentence, a huge she-blade fell from the sky. That 40-meter-long she-blade was a ghastly sight. Fortunately, only the hilt of the she-blade hit Yu Dongtian's head, and it didn't behead him. I was wrong. Yu Dongtian's face was pale. He knelt on the ground with a thud. But I didn't mean it. I saw Dongfang Xingyang's expression, so I blurted it out. Actually, this was what Dongfang Xingyang thought. Uncle Zhuo, please understand, Dongfang Xingyang is really not a good person. Dongfang Xingyang, who had already walked far away, turned black instantly. This son of a bitch, he's really vengeful. He's still trying to shift the blame at this critical moment. Zhuo Xiaoduo and the others, who had just received a large amount of cultivation resources, spent every day in the Tower of Annihilation. All of them fought and cultivated, as if they didn't care about their lives. Among them, the ones who were the craziest were the few female students. Their innate talent was slightly lacking. When they cultivated, they were even more desperate than the group of male students. Their cultivation and combat experience were increasing day by day. Zhen Piapiao and Gao Qiao were the two girls who were the most desperate among the group of female students. They were even more desperate than Wan Lixiu. Every time they fought, they had to fight throughout the entire arena. Moreover, they had to do it several times. It was probably because their foundations were the weakest, so their combat strength was naturally the weakest. No matter who they were up against, they would definitely be at an absolute disadvantage. No one could let them gain an advantage over them. However, these two girls were shockingly resilient. No matter how serious their injuries were, as soon as they recovered, they would immediately challenge again. Li Chenglong had calculated. 1 day and 1 night in the outside world was equivalent to 5 months in the Tower of Annihilation. And in these 5 months, the number of times each of Zhen Piapiao and Gao Qiao was crazily attacked. By a conservative estimate, it was more than 2,500 times. This was an appalling number that could drive anyone crazy. This was clearly a battle where there was no hope of winning. Everyone was stronger than the two of them. Of course, they were constantly improving, but the others were also improving. Their progress was not worse than theirs. For example, Li Chenglong, Yu Moyan Long Yusheng, and the others were improving faster, much faster. Under the effect of such a vicious cycle, they could only be attacked and crushed all the way. They never thought of counterattacking and showing off their power. But as it went on, the two girls never had the intention to give up or relax. When they were beaten down, they would get up again, continue to fight and resist. When they really couldn't take it anymore, they would go back to cultivate and improve. Then they would try again, resist again, and fight again. This ruthlessness made Li Chenglong and the others feel a sense of crisis. If they were caught up or even beaten down when they clearly had the upper hand, it would be a great loss of face. It was hard to tell if this was a vicious cycle or a virtuous cycle. Everyone started to go head-to-head with their lives on the line one after another. The weak ones chased with all their strength. The strong ones continued to run with all their strength. In the end, even Xiao joined the battle group. He controlled the Grand Sun True Fire and fought with everyone. Xiao Zhao's Great Sun True Fire was naturally sharp, but he was still young in the end, while everyone else was a genuine Sky Sword cultivator. Furthermore, they were Sky Sword cultivators that far surpassed the ordinary Sky Sword cultivators. When it came to facing the Great Sun True Fire head-on, their strength was still insufficient. However, they could seize the opportunity to defeat Xiao Xiao. But when the young ones were beaten, the old ones would naturally stand up for them. After Zhou Xiaoduo completely digested the two inheritances and got Zhao's complaint, he naturally joined the battle group with Zhou Xiaonian. Every day it was chaotic. Chapter 12:11. However, after a few rounds, it became a one-on-one duel between Zhou Xiaoduo and Zhou Xiaonian. The reason for this was that the gap between the two of them and the other 12 was simply too great. Even if the 12 of them were to fight together, they would still be crushed by either Zhou Xiaoduo or Zhou Xiaonian. They would be defeated before they even had a chance to unleash a single attack. And this was without Zhou Xiaoduo using his 99 cat hammer and Zhou Xiaonian using her ice spirit. Li Chenglong and the others were unwilling to accept this, but they could only accept this tragic reality in the face of such powerful opponents. After a few rounds, they experienced firsthand just how powerful Zhou Xiaonian and Zhou Xiaoduo were. This was especially true for Gao Qiao, and Zhen Piapiao, whose beautiful faces were becoming more and more bleak. The others were also powerful, but at least they were still within reach. However, Zhou Xiaonian and Zhou Xiaoduo were already beyond reach. The reason why they said they were beyond reach was because they knew that the two of them were only at the Skysore realm, the same level as everyone else. If they didn't know, the two of them would never believe that they were Skysore realm cultivators, who had only recently broken through to the Skysore realm. Even if they were Dao integration stage cultivators, no one would be surprised. After that, everyone decided to split up the battleground. With the mountain of Qi as the boundary, this side belonged to Zhou Xiaoduo and Zhou Xiaonian, while the other side belonged to the 12 of them. Everyone minded their own business and didn't come looking for trouble, so they shouldn't come looking for trouble. The 12 of them didn't know that Zhou Xiaoduo and Zhou Xiaonian were also under a lot of pressure. Li Chenglong and the others were all fighting with their lives on the line. If they allowed these guys to close in on them, they wouldn't even need to worry about catching up to them. As long as the 12 of them worked together, They would be able to contend against either Zhuo or Zhuo. God knew how smug they would be. Thus, the two of them also began to cultivate, absorb, and battle with all their might. They didn't know what kind of cycle it was, but it was a cycle. Furthermore, Zhuo and Zhuo were still competing with each other. Another day and night passed. It was already the evening of the second day, and the lights were just beginning to turn on. Zhuo and Zhuo went out again and arrived at the printing factory. Boss Zhou had been waiting at the door for a long time. When he saw Zhuo coming, he immediately greeted him with joy. "Boss, you're here." Zhuo didn't waste any time and asked directly, "How's it going?" Boss Zhou also didn't dawdle and took out a sample. The business card was usually very small, but the patterns and dark patterns on it were extremely exquisite. Zhuo was very satisfied when he saw it. It was exactly the same as the version he had imagined. There was no difference at all. "Not bad." Zhuo asked, "How many did you make?" "On the first day, because we still had to model, we only finished 1 million pieces." Boss Zhou said, "We're still rushing the production in 3 shifts. From tomorrow onwards, the daily production can reach 20 million pieces. The printing equipment supplier I ordered has already sent the goods. It will arrive in about 5 days. After all the installation is completed and can be put into use, the daily production can reach 60 million pieces. In addition, I've contacted another 30 printing factories. It's estimated that in half a month, we can reach a daily production of 1 billion pieces. Of course, this is the ideal situation. We will assign people to supervise the product quality to ensure that there are no defective products. I'm still in contact with the new factories. The daily supply will definitely reach a higher level. The supply of 9 quadrillion pieces in 3 years will definitely be achieved. Well, give me this 1 million first." Zhuo was very satisfied with Boss Zhou's ability to do things and gave him considerable affirmation. He thought that it would be the best if he could get tens of thousands of pieces on the first day. He didn't expect that he could get so much supply in one day. It was enough to use for a while. However, after seeing the printing process, Zhuo suddenly understood. A large piece of paper could make 100 business cards. It was printed at once and kept flowing out like flowing water. Then on the other side, it was cut with a large guillotine. If there were 20 pieces of paper, it would be cut together. It would be a finished product without any repair. In 1 minute, 3,000 finished products would be produced. If it was an ordinary business card, it would only be cut together when there were 100 pieces. However, this kind of business card was of good quality and was much thicker. Therefore, it would be cut with 20 pieces. There were only 5 such machines now. In other words, if they only worked 24 hours a day here, the daily output of 20 million could be achieved. Of course, the premise was that the machine was not broken and there were no malfunctions. This job was simply too easy. It was not enough to describe it as a profit with a small capital. However, after considering Zhuo's requirements for quantity and quality, even if the 30 printing factories contacted were to add up, based on the calculation of 1 billion per day, the order would still not be completed within 3 years. Because according to the current production rate, it would take at least 30 years to complete. Not to mention, no matter how strict and cautious they were, the quality of the finished product could not be completely flawless. In addition to the removal of defective products, there was also the daily maintenance of the machine, the occasional machine malfunction, and other irresistible factors. If they wanted to complete the order, they would have to contact more printing factories to do it together. Regarding this, Boss Zhou had already made up his mind. This order was not difficult, but it was not simple either. It required considerable business skills to complete it within the time limit. Zhuo expressed satisfaction with Boss Zhou's thorough consideration and plan. After receiving the 1 million finished products, he generously gave out a batch of secular high-end tobacco, wine, sugar, and tea. Everyone has worked hard. These are the benefits for everyone. Long live the boss. The cheers were thunderous. After leaving the printing factory, Zhuo thought for a while and called Minister Ding again. "Uncle Ding, it's like this. I need to print a lot of things. So, I found a few factories to help me. I don't need to provide them with too much extra convenience. I just need to make sure that no one causes trouble, so as not to delay the completion of my order. No problem. On the other side, Minister Ding agreed readily. With his monstrous power, this kind of thing was nothing to him. He didn't even need to look for him. A secretary of a subordinate of a subordinate of a subordinate would be able to handle it. However, when Zhou Xiaoduo called him personally, Minister Ding obviously realized something, so he treated it as a big deal. After he received the contents of the order, he was also speechless. The minister's son was really not an ordinary person. How could an ordinary person do such a thing? 9 quadrillion business cards in 3 years. What a joke. Finally, everything is ready. We're just waiting to receive it. Zhou Xiaoduo breathed a sigh of relief. 9 quadrillion. Damn, you're asking for too much. Not to mention that there aren't so many people in this world. Even if all the people who have ever existed since ancient times were added together, it would still be far from this number. Zhou Xiaoyan was speechless. I set this number after careful consideration. I intend to use it all at once. It will take a long time. With our cultivation and future progress, it shouldn't be a problem for us to live for another few million years, right? I even think that this may not be enough. Zhou Xiaoduo was full of confidence. You're not planning to use it for the rest of your life, are you? Zhou Xiaoyan was shocked. There was no need for such a long-term plan, was there? How is that possible? Zhou Xiaoduo shook his head vigorously. I'm afraid this won't be enough for the rest of my life. Zhou Xiaoyan almost blurted out the vulgar words that only men would use. This little dog was crazy. After Zhou Xiaoduo received the 1 million business cards, he immediately put them into the Tower of Annihilation. Then, he placed them on a table that had been prepared beforehand. With a thought, he sealed them and stored them away. Then, he injected a little luck point into them, and turned them into mist. All the Tianji orders were enshrouded in mist. All the Tianji orders that were tainted with luck points instantly changed. The color became deeper, and the patterns seemed to come alive. They were full of a mysterious aura. With a thought, a piece of paper appeared in Zhou Xiaoduo's hand. He turned his head and looked at Boss Zhou, who was still watching him at the door. He smiled slightly. With a swoosh, the Tianji orders silently entered Boss Zhou's pocket. Boss Zhou did not notice this change at all. The words on the order flashed for a moment, and then disappeared. This was a short-term fortune that Zhou Xiaoduo had seen for Boss Zhou. When it came true, this Tianji orders would naturally be burned, and the luck points after the fortune reading would automatically descend. Compared to the previous method of obtaining luck points, this could be said to be much more advanced. It was more than twice as fast. What a treasure! What a good idea! What a good idea! What a huge profit! Zhou Xiaoduo was full of praise for the results, and his own wonderful ideas. He was in high spirits. Of course, if Boss Zhou wanted to see this Tianji orders, he would also see it. For example, if he accidentally saw his own order, he would naturally see the comments on it. However, after seeing it and waiting for it to come true, the luck points would be doubled. If an ordinary person like Boss Zhou only contributed 1/10 of the luck points, when he saw it with his own eyes, it would be 2 out of 10. It was fine if he put it in his pocket after seeing it, but when it came true, his pocket would naturally be empty. It did not matter if he threw it away, because no matter how hard he threw it, he could not throw it away. Zhou Xiaoduo threw it as he walked. No matter who he saw, as long as they were unlucky, or had something to do recently, he would directly throw it over with a thought. In just half an hour, he had sent out more than 300 of them. The last time he leveled up, he had accumulated so many luck points, but there were less than 50 drops left. This made Zhou Xiaoduo feel a great sense of crisis. Now that he had the Tianji orders, it was like a wholesale business. He would throw a Tianji orders at anyone he saw, especially when he saw a few people with bloody disasters. In Zhou Xiaoduo's eyes, they were like treasures. He only felt that the luck points had already fallen into his pocket. Of course, Zhou Xiaoduo's first order was naturally used on Zhou Xiaoyan. It would be the best in a year. With the wind and the water, the colorful phoenix flies on the dragon. The wind and the clouds meet together, a cup of Qingquan wine. However, under the circumstances where I can write it, I still want to try my best not to go back on my word. I will return it slowly. I beg for monthly votes. Chapter 12:12. Not bad, not bad. Nian Nian is so lucky. Zhuo was so happy that he could not close his mouth. Then he flung it at himself. Poof! The heavenly secret order was instantly reduced to ashes. This is too good. Zhuo was speechless. While he was strolling leisurely, he passed by a forest by chance. Looking around, he saw that these lush trees were almost completely destroyed by the recent battle. Thus, Zhuo threw out hundreds of Tianji orders. Trees are also living creatures in the world. They are also lives. All living creatures suffer. Why do they suffer? Why do they suffer? Zhuo was full of nonsense. His face was full of compassion. These are also fate points. It's a pity that these short-lived flowers and plants, as well as those small trees, can't produce fate points. It's such a pity. They are clearly part of all living beings. Why are they so biased? Otherwise, I would have used up this 1 million today. Zhuo was happy, but he was also a little dissatisfied. What's wrong with flowers and plants? Could it be that little flowers and little grass, weren't they also a life? How unfair is God? Zhuo quietly landed on Jin Yunqing's back and tossed a bloody calamity to him. Then, he leisurely returned and tossed a bloody calamity to Li Chenglong and the others. These debtors are all so lucky. Humph. The luckier you are, the more I will earn. You owe me so much. Do you really think you can pay me back in this lifetime? In your dreams? How can there be such a good thing in the world? Zhuo thought bitterly. With Grandpa's ability to catch a toad, I'd like to see where you can run to. The present has an end, but the future is endless. As long as we don't die, there will be a day when you will pay me back with interest. With a thought, he showed it to Zhang Xuejuan, but was immediately shocked. Oh my God! How could there be such a thing? The immortal heart of a martyr, the soul of a beautiful woman. The demonic flame soars to the heavens, and the stars fall with a single breath. Zhuo was shocked. This Zhang Xuejuan was actually this awesome? Could it be that the god-slaying spear had entered her body first? Therefore, he hurriedly dragged Yin Shirsi out and interrogated him. Tell me what happened. This Miss Zhang's body. At this moment, Yin Shirsi behaved abnormally subserviently, and even seemed a little guilty. Cough. There's really no other way. I mean, how can she have so much potential? I want to know the whole story, Zhuo asked in a deep voice. It's normal for it to have great potential. That's a great power accumulated by the god-slaying spear's main body, over a long period of time. Or rather, it's more appropriate to call it pure devil chi. Speaking of this, Yin Shirsi fumed. This should have been his. In order to settle the previous karma, the god-slaying spear's main body had given him this tyrannical power. At that time, something unexpected happened. The other side needed a strong power to guard the pass, and even attacked you, boss. So there was an explosion. After the explosion, my spirit was extremely weak, and I couldn't control my primordial chi at all. Then, boss, you pulled me out. Her spirit and power were originally separated. When I came out, the power naturally stayed in her body and became her foundation. Yin Shirsi sobbed. Yin Shirsi said with tears in his eyes, Lady Zhan is the one who is really lucky. She didn't do anything, but she already has the pure power of the demonic monarch hidden in her body. Boss, you also protected her soul. Once she wakes up, she will absorb the pure demonic chi and merge it with it. Then, she will transform into an expert. Sigh. Comparisons are odious. Yin Shirsi didn't know what to say. He, the designated inheritor, had been robbed of all his power for no reason. He had to start all over again and continue to work hard to regain his glory. Zhang Yunfei, on the other hand, had inherited everything while she was unconscious. Who could he blame for this? How long will it take for you to recover to your original level? Zhuo asked unhappily. I'll need a long time. The main thing is that I lack the nourishment of a devil soul. Yin Shirsi was a little short of breath. You haven't fought with the devil clan, so I can't absorb their devil souls. I can only use the most basic methods to aid my cultivation. Of course, the efficiency won't be high. Devil soul? Zhuo was stunned. The soul of the devil clan? No. It's the devil chi that the devil clan naturally emits when they cultivate devil techniques. Then they purify it. Yin Shirsi said weakly. As for the soul, Sister Bai and Brother Black like it. I don't need it, and I don't dare to snatch it. I can't snatch it even if I wanted to. Sister Bai? Brother Black? Zhuo was stunned. Who was he talking about? That's right. Yin Shirsi looked behind Zhuo in fear. Zhuo turned around and saw Bai and Jiu looking at Yin Shirsi with burning eyes. He couldn't help sweating. Day after day passed like a year to Zhuo and the others. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that a day passed like years. They had fought so hard in the Tower of Destruction many times. When they came out, they realized that a day and an hour hadn't passed yet. How could a day not pass like years? One day on the outside was equivalent to many months on the inside. It was as if one day was equivalent to 1 year. Finally, on the 5th day, Zhuo and the others came out together. It wasn't for fun, but because they were so bored in the Tower of Destruction. Other than Xiang Chong, who refused to come out and wanted to accompany Zhan Xuejuan, everyone else was there. It all started because of what Zhuo said. I have something to do tonight. We might have to fight. Upon hearing this, everyone's excitement was off the charts. Hence they all came out. Everyone seemed to be moving separately, but in fact Zhuo and Zhuxianyan were the core. They went out and went straight to the West City. Jin Yunsheng, who was praised by Zhuo for being decisive and not sloppy, had been in a daze for the past few days. He hadn't gone out for 2 days. Being decisive and not sloppy didn't mean that he wasn't sad or disappointed. This incident had dealt a devastating blow to him. Although he was the one who initiated the breakup, he felt as if his heart was being cut into pieces every moment. No matter how much happiness a relationship had brought, it would also bring about the same amount of hurt. Moreover, the hurt wouldn't come one by one, but would come all at once. Jin Yunsheng's current situation was exactly like that. He didn't understand what was wrong with him. I was the one who didn't want her. She was the one who let me down. She cheated on me. Why am I in so much pain when I've taken the initiative to abandon her? Shouldn't I just be bitterly disappointed in her? Because he was just a novice in love, he naturally didn't understand that he had already prepared to spend the rest of his life with that person. He had built a blueprint for their future, and was even prepared to devote his life to that person. Once it was over, his entire heart would be empty at that moment. Empty. Not only was he hurt and disappointed, but he was also close to death. It's been 4 days. Why does this room still smell like her? Jin Yunsheng muttered to himself. After casually eating a few steamed buns and a piece of pickled vegetables, he prepared to go to work in the afternoon. Just like how the earth wouldn't stop spinning for anyone, no matter how empty his heart was, he still had to live his life. He couldn't give up on his life. There were still many things on his shoulders. He looked at himself in the mirror and laughed self-deprecatingly. Sometimes I really admire your persistence. You're clearly living a life worse than a dog, but you have to work hard to be like a human. He closed the door and locked it. Jin Yunsheng rubbed his face hard. A smile appeared on his face as he prepared to walk out. At this moment his phone suddenly rang. It was a call from his ex-girlfriend. She wanted to meet him. Jin Yunsheng refused. However, the other party called again. She was sincere and couldn't be refused. Even if we've already broken up, the past is still there. I've let you down, so I don't want to ask for your forgiveness. I just want to see you one last time. From now on, we'll go our separate ways. I'm leaving Shangjing tomorrow to return to my hometown. Perhaps this will be the last time we'll see each other in this life. His ex-girlfriend's words were filled with sadness. Jin Yunsheng's heart couldn't help but soften. He only felt a sense of emptiness surging in his heart, and he subconsciously agreed. They agreed on a time and place, and when he saw that it was about time, he decided to return to his room. He carefully washed himself and tried his best to make himself clean and neat. He sat quietly in the room for a while. Seeing that it was already past 4 in the afternoon, he slowly walked out of the room. It was better to arrive a little earlier than to arrive late. Just like what his ex-girlfriend had said, perhaps this would be the last meal between the two of them, the last tie between them. Also, he had to treat her to a meal no matter what. This was a man's dignity. Although he didn't have much savings, and didn't have a future to look forward to, for the sake of a man's dignity, he had to take it into consideration. Moreover, Jin Yunxing had a thought that he didn't dare to think about and didn't believe. If she sincerely repents, what should I do? Should I forgive her? If so, is it worth believing? He didn't know what he was thinking, but his mind was in a mess. At this moment, it was already 5:30 in the afternoon, not far from the third prince's residence. In the study of an underground secret room, this secret room was right outside the third prince's residence. A tunnel that was hundreds of meters deep led from the residence to a nearby business district. It was about 20 meters underground in the business district. Now, all the tunnels in the third prince's residence had been filled up. In other words, this place was an isolated place. One could only leave from here, and couldn't come back from there. Ever since the two families of the Dao League came to the capital to ask for Jun Chongkong's forgiveness, the royal family was furious. Jun Chongkong had been running around, and didn't dare to return to his home. He had been staying here for more than a month. Every day, he would hide during the day, and come out at night. Fortunately, a lot of things had happened in the capital during this period, and the people of the Feng and Yin families hadn't found him yet. Now that the third prince, Jun Chongkong, was excited. Are you sure this can activate the power of the heavenly Tao? Opposite him was a person covered in a black robe. He couldn't see what the person looked like, but he was very thin. Your Highness, I'm sure I can activate the power of the heavenly Tao and completely change your luck. Will doing this really allow me to obtain the fortune of the yellow gown, become the master of destiny, descend of the true dragon, so that I can subtly influence the goddess of spiritual thoughts, and make her fall in love with me? Why do I feel a little scared? Jun Chongkong was still a little hesitant. He wasn't stupid. However, he had no choice now. Chapter 12:13. Your Highness, that's not the point. What's important now is an opportunity to turn the tables. Coincidentally, there's such an opportunity right now. The black-robed man's voice was dry as he said, we can only try our best to fight for this one and only chance. Only then can we turn the tables. Now what your Highness has done in White Mountain City has been known by the Feng and Yun clan of the Dao League. That's why the masters of the Feng and Yun clan are searching for you everywhere. During this time, many of our masters have fallen into their hands. We don't know if they're dead or alive. Moreover, many of your Highness' secret clubs and strongholds have been destroyed by the Feng and Yun clan. The situation is precarious. If you fall into their hands, I'm afraid your life will be in danger. The Feng and Yun clan of the Dao League are beyond the scope of the rules and regulations of the world. They won't care about your royal identity, not to mention that you've offended other people. The royal family has no relatives, so it's natural for them to give up on you. Right now, we have no one to help us. We can only try this legendary method to fight for the last chance. Why should we care about the suspense? What you should be happy about right now is that the royal bloodline flowing in your body can also draw upon the fate of the royal family. As long as you absorb all of the fate of the royal family, you will naturally become the destined son of heaven. The royal family has no relatives, you are the same as others, and you are also the same. At that time, you'll have the fate of the heavens to protect you. Everything can be done easily. Think about that spiritual goddess who has the fate of the phoenix. As long as your Highness becomes the destined emperor, you'll naturally be guided by fate. Everything will be just a matter of time. Of course, it doesn't mean that all the plans will succeed after doing this. Your Highness, you'll still have to work hard to mediate. It's not going to be done once and for all. The black-robed man spoke with sincerity. He put everything on the table, and spoke with great sincerity and detail. The third prince's expression slowly calmed down. Then he became very excited. If someone told him that he would be able to obtain everything immediately after doing this, and that he would be in control of the world, he would never believe it. However, the black-robed man had also said that this was only a reversal of fortune, and he still needed to work harder. This increased the degree of trust in him. More importantly, the third prince knew very well that he might only have this last chance to reverse the situation in one fell swoop. Everything else, such as the fact that he had no relatives in the royal family, was just a minor detail. The third prince had long understood that, so it was not a problem at all. Let me think about it. The third prince paced back and forth, as if he was thinking about something. But in reality, he had already agreed in his heart, and was even very excited. Soon after, he asked hypocritically, "If I take in all the luck of the imperial family, will it cause any harm to father and big brother?" The black-robed man sighed and said, "Third prince, this is an inevitable result. Even if a general succeeds, his bones will be piled up like a mountain, let alone the fate of an emperor. At least it won't be life-threatening, right?" The third prince asked, "They were heartless to me, so I can't be unjust to them." Hearing the meaning of his words, the black-robed man couldn't help but despise him in his heart. There were no outsiders here. Who were you trying to show off to? However, he muttered, as long as third prince doesn't have the intention to kill, the retired emperor and the eldest prince will naturally be fine. At most, their luck will be worse than ordinary people. Then I am relieved. Jun Changkong's face was as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his mind. Then shall we start now? Well, then third prince will have to endure some of the pain. The black-robed woman took out a few jade bottles and put them on the table. If you feel that you can't endure it, drink a bottle. This bottle contains the Heavenly Star holy water. Just one sip is enough to make up for all the missing blood in your body and increase your body's ability to produce blood. You will be able to withstand the current situation as much as possible. Okay. The map is ready. Okay. Please. As far as the eye could see, there was an ancient star chart on the ground. On the star chart, there were 15 glittering objects placed in different positions. Your Highness, please cut open the veins on your wrist and drip your blood from the first point. When the light from the first point is extinguished, follow the path and spread it to the second point. The distance between the first point and the second point must be filled with blood. You must make sure that the light is completely extinguished before you can move forward, and so on until you reach the last star. You can't make any mistakes in the process. I understand. Jun Changkong couldn't wait to take out his knife. He gestured and asked, "Cut the artery directly?" The black-robed woman's eyes flickered. She said, "The effect is the best. I am afraid that it will be too hard for third prince to continue." What do I have to be afraid of now? Life and death in the wind and rain. What haven't I experienced? Jun Changkong laughed heroically. He put the medicine on his right hand and made sure that it was within reach. Then he opened the mouth so that he could drink it at any time. Then, without any hesitation, he raised his hand and brought the knife down. With a schwa sound of flesh being cut open, the artery on his left wrist was cut off by the knife. A large amount of blood gushed out like a fountain. The tide of blood fell on the first star on the map. Jun Changkong couldn't help but be surprised. It is really magical. So much blood has poured down, but it still can't be extinguished. Once the arteries of the human body were cut, the blood in the whole body would gush out in a very short time. The amount of blood loss was very shocking. At that moment, Jun Changkong's blood kept gushing out and was absorbed by the first star on the star atlas. Not a single drop fell outside. Although it had only been a short while, at least 1,000 cc of blood had been poured in. However, the first star did not show any signs of extinguishing. Can it be extinguished? Jun Changkong couldn't help but panic. He was also an expert in cultivation. Although his physique was far better than ordinary people, such a large amount of blood loss was no different from the continuous loss of vitality. If this continued, how could he continue? His heart was in a mess. He couldn't calm down. If this expert hadn't saved his life more than once when he was being chased by the Dao League and the Feng family, and showed a lot of sincerity to him, Jun Changkong would have doubted the other party's motives. After a while, at least 2 kilograms of blood dripped into the first star. Finally, the first star was extinguished. Only one star was extinguished, but Jun Changkong already felt that his body was a little weak. It was difficult to continue. Understanding the situation was one thing. Witnessing and feeling the loss of so much blood was one thing. Even with Jun Changkong's physique as a returned profound realm cultivator, he couldn't bear it. There were still 14 more star positions waiting for him. There was also the path in the middle that needed to be filled with blood. Could he really complete it? The black-robed man smiled faintly. He didn't mean to urge Jun Changkong. Instead, he waved his hand. The injury on the third prince's wrist suddenly stopped. Cool medicine sprinkled on it. It started to scab at a visible speed. What is the meaning of this? Jun Changkong was puzzled. In his understanding, if the blood traces along the way couldn't be interrupted, then the 15 star positions should be extinguished in one go. How could it be interrupted? We can't let your highness hurt your foundation just to succeed. The black-robed man's voice was hoarse but concerned. As long as one star position is extinguished, your highness can rest for a while. You can take medicine to recover your physical condition. You can also rest for a while to prepare for the next stage. How is it? Does your highness feel more confident? As he spoke, he took out some nourishing treasures and let Jun Changkong eat them. Then, he let him drink 2 mouthfuls of the Heavenly Star holy water. After drinking the Heavenly Star holy water, Jun Changkong clearly felt that his body had recovered almost instantly. He was full of vigor and strength. His blood was surging in his veins. The large amount of blood he had lost just now was completely recovered. He even had some left over. His cultivation also seemed to have improved a little. Good stuff. Really good stuff. Jun Changkong was full of praise. He was born in the royal family. He had reached the returned profound realm early on. Whether it was his eyesight or experience, he was extraordinary. He had also enjoyed a lot of treasures. However, the Heavenly Star holy water had such an immediate healing effect. It even had the ability to improve his cultivation. It was really rare. Just as the black-robed man said, he no longer had any concerns about the so-called loss of blood. Then shall we continue? The black-robed man narrowed his eyes. Of course. Jun Changkong's confidence increased. With so many treasures here, why would he be afraid of losing blood? What a joke. It was more important to finish this quickly. Oh, you shouldn't have stopped me just now. Now that the wound has scabbed, I have to cut it again. Jun Changkong laughed and pretended to complain. In order to make your highness feel more at ease and have more confidence, it was not in vain. The black-robed man smiled and said in a genteel manner, "Oh, come on, let's continue. Let's cut it again." Jun Changkong chuckled. The black-robed man said, "Your highness, did you see a flash of yellow light when the stars dimmed?" "I saw it. This is..." Jun Changkong's breathing quickened. "This is the yellow gown. But it's still not enough to do anything." The black-robed man's voice was hoarse. There was some meaning in it. "Then what are we waiting for? Let's continue." Jun Changkong was completely excited. He took the initiative to pick up the knife and was ready to cut himself. "This old man has to ask your highness one more thing. You know the consequences. If you continue, there will be no turning back." The black-robed man reminded in a deep voice. The more he reminded, the more arrogant Jun Changkong became. "Don't worry. How can I turn back on this road?" "Good. Your highness is so bold." The black-robed man simply started to call him, "Your highness." Jun Changkong laughed and cut his wrist with the knife. The artery was instantly cut off. It was even more resolute than the previous cut. Blood gushed out again, and a bloody scar spread out. On the other side, Jin Yunsheng was already in the business district. This was not a high-end business district. The prices of all the goods were very affordable. Therefore, when he came here to eat, drink, and spend money, it was generally affordable. Moreover, this place was not very far away. It was the third prince's residence, so it was relatively quiet. After all, in the hearts of the commoners, the royal family was still very intimidating. Today's condition is not very good. Moreover, Alliance Master Hong Xiaonyo is drunk. He kept chatting with me and asked me about my comrades in the sunshine. Oh, I'm so annoyed. I wanted to work overtime tonight, but today is a special day, so I can only work 2 shifts. Hong Xiaonyo is a chatterbox. He wasted so many hours of my time. Humph. Chapter 12:14. The two of them agreed to meet at a small restaurant. In fact, this restaurant was not small, and the courtyard was especially big. The owner had divided the courtyard into many small rooms. It was lunchtime, so it was noisy and crowded. Jin Yunxing had been to this restaurant many times before. Every time he enjoyed the food, he would feel the fragrance in his mouth and cheeks. However, this time, he was stunned for a long time in front of the restaurant. The past flashed past his mind, and he didn't know what he was thinking. In the past, he would come here happily with his girlfriend. But today, he was here for a breakup meal. In the past, he was happy and full of expectations for the future. But today, he only had a withered mood. "You're here, brother Jin." The waiter was very familiar with Jin Yunxing. "Yes, is there a room left?" "Your girlfriend has already booked it. It's the room in the corner on the right." "The room in the corner?" Jin Yunxing smiled bitterly. In the past, he would choose the room in the middle every time he came. Looking at the noisy crowd outside, he would feel a little angry. Even if he couldn't book the room in the middle, he wouldn't go to the corner. He would rather choose the hall. But today, he booked the room in the corner. It was indeed a breakup meal. It was so different from the past. What did this mean? Did it mean that he had really walked to the corner? That he had reached the end? Jin Yunxing smiled bitterly. "Is she here?" "Not yet." "Okay, then I'll go in and wait for her. Give me a pot of black tea." Jin Yunxing originally wanted to order the green tea that he often drank, but when he was about to say it, he felt that the word green was like an arrow that shot into his heart. He subconsciously changed his words. "Okay." Time passed slowly. The sky gradually darkened, and the lanterns were already lit. On the star map in front of the third prince, 7 stars had already extinguished, and 8 stars were left. In other words, it was less than half of the star map. As for the precious medicine known as the Heavenly Star Holy Water, he had already drunk 4 bottles. The black-robed man wasn't in a hurry. He could only wait patiently. Occasionally, he would comfort and advise Jun Changkong to act according to his ability and not be too hasty. Only when one of the stars on the star map dimmed and a yellow light flashed would a flash of light appear in his eyes. It had to be said that this third prince, in addition to being very afraid of death, was also very eager for quick success. Everyone had told him that he didn't need to finish it in one go. After pouring his blood into extinguishing 1 star, he could take a short rest. However, he simply didn't listen. Instead, he was impatient to proceed to the next step. It was probably because of this that he had consumed a lot of Heavenly Star Holy Water, just to extinguish 7 stars. The black-robed man didn't expect that the third prince Jun Changkong would do this, because of the Heavenly Star Holy Water's miraculous effects. The 4 times he stopped to consume it, it actually increased his returning profound realm cultivation, which had been stagnant for a long time, by 10%. It was truly an unexpected gain and a great benefit. Therefore, he became more and more convinced of the black-robed man's words. Naturally, he wanted to complete the process of collecting the imperial fortune as soon as possible. What Jun Changkong didn't know was that the black-robed man had gone through a lot of trouble to make such a big move. He opened a hole in the imperial family's chi meridian and extended it here with the formation. He also used a lot of secret medicine to cooperate with the formation. Using the power of the stars, he poured the imperial family's fate into the third prince's body. This series of actions took a lot of effort. His ultimate goal was to use the imperial family's bloodline as the carrier, and use the blood as the medium to extract the imperial family's fate, and pour it into the star map. Now that he had reached the final step, it was the most important point. Slow down. So be it. It was fine as long as he could succeed. However, this was all thanks to the Feng and Feng clan of the Dao League. If it weren't for these 2 clans coming all the way from Baishan City, Jun Changkong wouldn't have been so pressured. A person like Jun Changkong would never risk his life if he wasn't in a desperate situation. In contrast, the secret medicine that he had given up was worth it even though it was a waste. Under the black-robed man's close watch, a large amount of blood mixed with a faint yellow color that Jun Changkong couldn't see gushed out and poured into the star map. During this process, the two of them didn't speak for a long time. Jun Changkong was full of anticipation and impatience, while the black-robed man was very calm and steady. Compared to Jun Changkong's impatience, the difference between the experienced and the inexperienced was even more obvious. The experienced and prudent black-robed man naturally had a calmness that was far beyond an ordinary person's. Success was right in front of him. In just a moment he would be done. On the other side, Jin Yunqing's girlfriend finally arrived at the restaurant in the courtyard. She came late, but she came with someone else. It was a young man with 2 bodyguards. Needless to say, if Jin Yunqing's girlfriend's character was disregarded, then her appearance was rather good. Regardless of whether it was her figure or appearance, she was extraordinarily exquisite, and she was filled with a delicate and pitiful aura. If a woman was given a full score of 100 points, Jin Yunqing's ex-girlfriend would still score more than 90 points for her appearance, even though she was just a mortal. If her appearance and figure didn't change after experiencing wealth, and if she added some graceful and luxurious aura, her score would be slightly higher. Facing his girlfriend and that young man, Jin Yunqing didn't feel as restrained as he had imagined. He actually became carefree. Please take a seat," Jin Yunqing said indifferently. "I'll be the host for today's meal. I wish you a happy life in the future." When Jin Yunqing saw that his girlfriend had brought this man over, he immediately gave up. However, he also let go of his feelings for him completely. Now that he had completely let go, he became magnanimous. Even though they might not be able to meet again, they should still be friends. Now that he spoke sincerely, he appeared even more graceful. In the cubicle, Li Qinglong sighed and said, "She's beautiful and graceful, but she's the root of trouble. The ancients say that a poor man shouldn't marry a beautiful woman. With Jin Yunqing's current situation, he won't be able to hold on to such a girl no matter what." Zhuo Xiaoyan said indifferently, "It all depends on the person. As long as this girl can hold on, Jin Yunqing can. So the key to this matter is still this girl." Zhuo Xiaoyan's heart stirred, and he reached out to hold Zhuo Xiaoyan's hand. Before Zhuo Xiaoyan was awakening, even though the situation was slightly different, it was fundamentally no different from Jin Yunqing and the others. At that time, Zhuo Xiaoyan and he were clearly not from the same world, but Zhuo Xiaoyan had never wavered. Sensing Zhuo Xiaoyan's intentions, Zhuo Xiaoyan smiled. For a moment, she felt warmth in her heart, and she clasped Zhuo Xiaoyan's hand with her slender fingers. She felt peaceful, happy and satisfied. "Boss, is this kid's luck really that good?" Long Yuxing couldn't help but be curious. No matter how he looked at it, Jin Yunqing was just an extremely ordinary cultivator. At most he was at the Khanate realm. Such a cultivation level was simply too ordinary in the astral souls. Right now, he's in the midst of a bloody disaster. There's no way forward to speak of. However, if he survives this calamity, he'll have good luck. It's hard to say how far he'll go in the future, but his luck will definitely be exuberant. Now that we've intervened, the signs of his good luck are becoming more and more obvious. It's considered a lucky hit that changed the trajectory of his life. Since it's already a lucky hit, we might as well give him a chance. Zhuo Xiaoduo said, "Perhaps we can let him join our company or Gao Xiao's interest was piqued. From what you've said, this kid is valued by you so much that he's caught your eye?" "Not necessarily. I just admire his decisiveness and foresight." Zhuo Xiaoduo smiled. "In the end, it's still just a casual move. However, Jin Yunqing has good luck in the future. He'll be of great use." Zhuo Xiaoyan, on the other hand, noticed something else. "You have a company. Why don't I know about it?" Zhuo Xiaoduo and Li Qinglong were speechless. Next door, they were also talking about an old and cliched topic. "It seems like we're indeed from different worlds. The so-called matching families might be an old rule, but it's not necessarily wrong. It's a good thing to separate as soon as possible," said Jin Yunqing. The dishes were served one after another. Jin Yunqing said indifferently, "I don't have much money, so I'm destined not to be able to treat everyone to better food. This is the best I can do. Please don't mind. After all, from today onwards, we'll go our separate ways. Perhaps we won't meet again in this lifetime. I won't say anything resentful, but I can't say more blessings to all of you. Please, please raise your glass. Jin Yunsheng raised his neck and downed the wine in one gulp. I only hope that I, Jin Yunsheng, will only eat such a banquet once in my life. The girl opposite him had tears in her eyes. Looking at Jin Yunsheng's cold face, the hatred in her eyes grew stronger. She said indifferently, "That's not necessarily true. In today's society, materialism is rampant. Jin Yunsheng, if you don't change yourself as soon as possible, I'm afraid you'll have to eat such a meal many times." "That's my fate as well." Jin Yunsheng smiled in a carefree manner and wasn't angry at all. He said indifferently, "You don't have to worry about me after today." The girl said, "I know you hate me. You hate me for being greedy and ungrateful. After all, you paid for all my expenses when I went to school and learned martial arts. Now that I've abandoned you, you'll definitely hate me. That's human nature, so I don't blame you." Jin Yunsheng said, "You're wrong. I don't hate you. Actually, I should thank you. After all, you're so beautiful, and you even spent some time with me. I should be very satisfied, because I should have known from the very beginning that we're from different worlds. Being able to spend some time with you is already an advantage for me. Many people probably have the same thoughts, right?" The girl paused for a moment and said faintly, "Jin Yunsheng, let me ask you a question. If I wasn't beautiful, would you still support me?" Jin Yunsheng said indifferently, "What's the point of talking about all of that now? But since you've asked, then I'll answer you honestly. I wouldn't." The girl heaved a sigh of relief and said with disdain, "So you've only taken a liking to my beauty since the very beginning?" Jin Yunsheng smiled and nodded, yet he laughed bitterly and hollowly in his heart. "Everyone loves beauty, yet it's actually a crime? But when I first met you, you were wearing shabby clothes. Your face was sallow and emaciated, your hair was disheveled, and you were eating vegetables in the market. I really don't understand. How could I have taken a fancy to your beauty? I supported your studies, supported your cultivation, and provided for everything you needed in life. A few years later, you finally expressed your gratitude to me, fell in love with me, and wanted to be with me for the rest of your life. After that, our relationship changed, and we became lovers. That's what happened after that. At that time, you were just a little girl who had yet to grow up. What right did you have to talk about beauty?" He just watched calmly as the girl he'd raised and protected with his life had finally shed her cocoon and become a butterfly. Yet she was about to leave just like that and never see him again. Even though he was unwilling to part with her, there were still some indescribable emotions flowing through his heart. The girl fell silent for a long time before she finally spoke in a hoarse voice. "I'm very grateful for your care and support all these years. Please forgive me. I'm just unwilling to accept this. I'm unwilling. I'm more beautiful than most women. Yet I have to suffer and suffer with you. Yes, I'm vain. But I can't wait to fight and succeed by your side. Yunsheng, I steamed a basket of your favorite meat buns for you before I came. Even if I don't have the face to beg you. I just hope that you can eat a bun in front of me. Perhaps I'll feel that I've repaid you a little. Just as you said, we might not meet again after today." The girl's tears finally fell. "All right." Jin Yunsheng didn't hesitate at all. He took the steaming hot bag and opened it. There were 6 snow-white buns inside that emitted an alluring fragrance. Jin Yunsheng smiled bitterly and said, "Speaking of which, I was the one who taught you how to make buns back then." The girl said, "Yes." Jin Yunsheng smiled as he picked up a bun and put it into his mouth. "The buns are poisonous." Li Chenglong could tell from the next room. He didn't even have to look to guess. "You know it's poisonous, but you still ate it." Xiang Bing's eyes widened. "You won't die if you don't eat it. If you eat it, you'll poison your kind heart to death," Yu Moyan said coldly. Everyone sighed in unison. In the next room, Jin Yunsheng chewed slowly with a smile on his face. Tears streamed down his face as he said softly, "Perhaps I'll only eat such delicious buns once in my life." A trace of hesitation flashed through the girl's eyes before she stood up and said, "I'm going to the washroom. Wait for me to come back. I'll drink with you tonight." "Yes, I'll drink with you tonight." Jin Yunxing smiled faintly as he watched her walk out. Then, he calmly looked at the three people opposite him. His smile grew wider. "What are you smiling about?" "I'm smiling. The poison has been administered and I've eaten it. She left to create an opportunity for you. What are you waiting for?" Jin Yunxing asked with a smile. Chapter 12:15. The young master smiled playfully. "Looks like Brother Jin isn't an ordinary person. I'm impressed. Since that's the case, the two of you can send Brother Jin on his way." The last sentence was for the two bodyguards. A woman who has a change of heart is really ruthless. It's actually cultivation dissolving powder and intestine piercing water. Jin Yunxing sighed and quickly stuffed all 6 buns into his mouth before he said, "Even though I might not be a match for you, I can't just wait for death to come, right? Life in this world is but a struggle for life." Young Master Chen said, "Kill him." One of the bodyguards laughed sinisterly and stepped forward. The other bodyguard took out a bottle of corpse-dissolving powder and a big bag. "Don't make it smell. Can't you just put it in your spatial ring?" Young Master Chen chided. "Aren't we just pretending to be dead? Please forgive us, please forgive us." The bodyguard smiled apologetically. On the other side, the life and death battle had already begun. Jin Yunxing's cultivation wasn't high, coupled with the fact that his heart was dead, and he had taken the initiative to take the poison. He was at a disadvantage as soon as they started fighting. However, he used some unknown method to suddenly become more and more courageous. Just as he said, he was fighting for his life. After a while, the wind from his fists became more and more violent. Every step he took was extremely powerful, and it became more and more powerful as he went on. Every step he took had the power to shake the earth and mountains. With the addition of Su Wei's power, he gradually turned the tables and fought with the bodyguard to a draw. This made the 3 people who thought that they could easily take him down were dumbfounded. Clearly, this was beyond their expectations. Jin Yunxing had a solemn expression on his face as he said indifferently, "Perhaps all of you aren't aware of this, but I possess the rare poison soul physique. Consuming poison would improve my cultivation and increase my spirit by 100 times instead. Even that little girl isn't aware of this. The stronger the poison, the more power I can unleash. It's all thanks to her ruthlessness that she gave me such a high-grade poison. Haha, looks like I can drag someone down with me today." Jin Yunxing laughed loudly. "She's asked me many times why I bought so many cheap pesticides and poisons at home, and why it's so unlucky. It's only because when I'm very tired, drinking a bottle can make me feel more refreshed. Those pesticides and poisons are no different from refreshing drinks to me. It's just that I'm afraid of scaring her, and also afraid that I'll turn into a real poisoned person. So I didn't tell her. I just want to live a good life and work hard to earn money to support my family. Why do you always have to force me? All I want is peace, happiness, and stability. Why can't I even meet such a low requirement in this world? Her aptitude is not good. I only wanted to spend the rest of my life with her, but I was betrayed. I've already agreed to let go and retreat it. Why do you still insist on forcing me to fight for my life? Why?" Jin Yunxing roared softly, and he fought even more madly. Every step he took caused the earth to tremble. The restaurant owner heard the news and came over. But young Master Chen stuffed him with a bunch of cash and whispered, 5 minutes. The owner looked at him worriedly, took the money and said, "When the city guards come later, I won't care." "Don't worry. I can handle it," young Master Chen said. At this moment, an earth-shattering sound came from the room. With a muffled rumble, the 2 rooms that were connected to each other collapsed one after the other. That at this moment, Jun Chongkong had already dripped his blood to the 13th star. His heart was immersed in the 3rd prince, who was about to be crowned with the emperor's robe and full of providence. He was focused on dripping his blood. Suddenly, the 2 of them felt the ground around them tremble. That dust began to fall from the sky above the secret room, as if there was really an earthquake. "What's going on?" The black-robed man looked at the sky suspiciously. Jun Changkong was also surprised by the change. He said in surprise, "What's going on? This is a business district next to the prince's mansion. Nothing should happen. Even if there is an earthquake, there should be a warning." The black-robed man frowned, and his eyes were full of worry. He said, "This secret room has been sealed by the heavenly star sealing array. Ordinary sounds from the outside can't be transmitted in. Similarly, the movements inside can't be transmitted out. But this doesn't include the sturdiness of the secret room. This is the only flaw." Jun Changkong said, "It won't be fine. When I built it, I added a lot of steel plates. Even if there is a disaster, it should be able to withstand the impact of a meteorite breaking through the sky and smashing into the nearby area." "What about the load-bearing capacity above?" the black-robed man asked hurriedly. "To be safe, I added a few layers of load-bearing capacity." Jun Changkong said confidently, "It's all made of reinforced concrete. It should be fine." "It should be fine." The black-robed man was speechless. Reinforced concrete? If it's really fine, why is there so much dust leaking out? Don't fucking do a shoddy project. That would be a huge scam. Even if it's made of reinforced concrete, it's not worth mentioning in front of the battle waves of high-level warriors. Did you see the construction process with your own eyes? The black-robed man felt more and more uneasy. This kind of project. Why do I, a prince, need to supervise it personally? Jun Changkong was stunned by the question. What are you afraid of in such a safe place? Didn't it just shake a little and some dust fell? Even if there is an earthquake, my secret room can definitely withstand it. Nothing will happen. The black-robed man was even more worried. The ominous premonition in his heart was getting stronger and stronger. "I'm not afraid of an earthquake. I'm afraid that there will be people fighting above." The black-robed man took a deep breath and said, "If there is a conflict between the two sides, one of them has an earth attribute talent or cultivates an earth attribute martial art, it may lead to a great change. Our plan will be ruined easily." "This can't be so coincidental?" Jun Changkong felt incredulous. "There are all kinds of strange things in this world. There are a lot of things that can happen." The black-robed man took a deep breath and said, "Let's speed up and finish it quickly." "Don't worry, let's speed up." Okay. At this time, they had already reached the 14th star. There was only one star left. The black-robed man felt that the shaking above was getting heavier and heavier. His heart was pounding, and he couldn't calm down. Faster, faster, faster. Suddenly, at this critical moment, there was an earth-shattering explosion. The entire roof of the secret room collapsed. "Fuck," the black-robed man cursed. Although it was only one word, the meaning behind it was complicated and difficult to explain. The star map that was about to be completed, and the blood river, that was flowing into a small stream, was smashed by the falling roof. Nothing could be seen. This sudden sense of loss, this regret of failing at the last step, anger, and unimaginable, inconceivable, an extreme annoyance in his heart. Countless negative emotions gathered together, that there was only one word that expressed it most incisively and vividly. On the other side, the third prince let out a blood-curdling scream. He was still bleeding madly, but due to the sudden turn of events, a falling brick smashed into his head. He couldn't help but let out a blood-curdling scream. Boom! The starlight on the black-robed man's body moved freely. He brazenly made a move and lifted the falling brick with his powerful cultivation. "Hurry up and bleed." Then, he grabbed Jun Changkong's left hand and chopped it off. Then, he pressed it on the last star on the star chart and poured his blood into it forcefully. Jun Changkong's scream was earth-shattering. You, what are you doing?" Having his hand cut off was completely different from losing blood. As an emperor, no matter what, he couldn't be a person with 5 physical forms missing. No matter how much he longed for a beautiful dream, at this moment, he was already certain that the black-robed man harbored evil intentions and had other plans. "Who the hell are you? What do you want to do?" Jun Changkong screamed miserably. The black-robed man didn't answer. He just grabbed Jun Changkong tightly and sealed all his cultivation. Then, he used his true qi to stimulate Jun Changkong's qi and blood. Blood gushed out from the wound. For a moment, the last star was about to be filled. This was the most extreme and last resort. The world was incomplete, and any formation diagram had flaws and loopholes. It would be best if the formation he had set up could be completed perfectly, but if it couldn't, he could still use the extreme method. He already had 14 stars. As long as the last 15 stars also received enough luck and blood, the formation could still be considered complete, and it could also exert 70 to 80% of its power. It was a great fortune and misfortune. However, when the black-robed man was still rejoicing that the formation could be completed in such a way, he heard a cracking sound. A person fell from the sky and coincidentally stepped on Jun Changkong's left arm. That person not only had the strength to stomp down, but also the sudden imbalance of strength. Lu Li's foot immediately pushed Jun Changkong to the side. It should be known that Jun Changkong's cultivation was sealed at this moment, so he was no different from an ordinary person. He fell to the ground with a bang. That person who fell down ruthlessly stomped on his lower abdomen, creating a big hole in his abdomen. Jun Changkong's body suddenly straightened. His eyes were full of despair. The black-robed man screamed. He saw the guy who suddenly fell from the sky step on Jun Changkong's flesh and blood with one foot. The other foot stepped on the star map that had been destroyed to the point that it couldn't be seen anymore. Banged at the star map was directly smashed into pieces. A mass of light suddenly dissipated. Some of the yellow starlight rushed into the man's body. The star formation was finished. Ah! The black-robed man raised his head and roared. He only felt that his heart had suddenly become hollow at this moment. It was the last moment. It was the last moment. If only he had a few more seconds. Bastard! Ah! The black-robed man went crazy. What kind of bastard are you? Chapter 12:16. If he had gone to the extreme just now and forcibly completed the formation, he could still retain 70 to 80% of its power. But now that the last step had been cut off, and the star map had been completely destroyed, the black-robed man had gone mad on the spot. Die! The black-robed man cursed with extreme hatred. His roar was extremely sharp. Then he slapped him fiercely. This slap was even more ferocious than the previous heaven and earth shattering. With Jin Yunqing's cultivation, he would definitely die under this slap, even if there were 100 of him. But at this moment, a blazing flame suddenly appeared, and a huge hammer suddenly appeared in front of the falling person. The black-robed person used all his strength to slap the hammer heavily with the force of a thunderbolt. There was a loud explosion and sparks flew everywhere. The black-robed man screamed in agony that never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that his palm strike, which he was so confident in, would actually land on a huge hammer. And indeed, it was a sledgehammer of a strange quality that was beyond what his palm could bear. In an instant, the force of the reverse impact was completely wrong. His wrist was immediately dislocated from the shock, and 2 of his bones were also broken. What kind of hammer is this? The black-robed man roared in anger and disbelief. If it was an ordinary hammer, or even a great hammer that had reached the level of a divine weapon, with his cultivation level, even if he couldn't smash it with his palm, he definitely wouldn't have ended up in such a state. Although he had used less strength, the rebound force was enough to break his bones? This must be a joke. That's what Xiaoduo had been waiting for Jin Yunqing to escape. As long as he escaped, he would meet Granny Greedy Wolf according to his fate. This was the predetermined result that Zhou Xiaoduo had seen with his manifestation technique. However, he had never expected that this brat would become hot-blooded and use the mixed effects of the 2 poisons to increase his strength several times. He was fighting with young Master Chen's 2 bodyguards so fiercely. Every step he took was thunderous. The more he fought, the more powerful he became. Zhou Xiaoduo was confused. Could it be that there's something wrong with my image technique? This brat's posture clearly showed that he wanted to fight to the death here. This was definitely not a lie. In other words, he had no intention of escaping at all. He was fighting for his life now. He was risking his life. He wanted to drag someone down with him no matter what. This was strange. If you don't run, how am I supposed to find you? Well, not only does this kid have the poison soul body, But he also cultivates the earth elemental art. Right now, his warrior heart is unprecedentedly strong, causing his body to circulate faster than ever. Zhou Xiaoduo was depressed. The others also looked at Zhou Xiaoduo with the same question in their eyes. What's going on? What's going on? Zhou Xiaoduo didn't even know what was going on. Suddenly, just when everyone was puzzled, there was an earth-shattering sound, and the room next door collapsed without any warning. The bottom was actually hollow. Zhou Xiaoduo's heart suddenly lit up, following which his room also started to tilt and collapse. Zhou Xiaoduo didn't say anything and jumped down from the room. Jin Yunxing really didn't expect the effect of the poison that his ex-girlfriend gave him to be so intense. She was clearly afraid that he wouldn't die. However, the more potent the poison was, the more it would increase his strength, and the higher it would be. He risked his life and put his life aside. There was only one thought left in his mind. If my life ends today, then one of you must accompany me on the lonely road to the Yellow Springs. Either you have money, or you have power, or you have huge forces. But in this situation where I don't care about anything, I'm equal to you in the face of life and death. Perhaps, this will be the only chance for me to be equal to you. So I won't miss this opportunity. Even if I have to sacrifice my life, I'll make you bleed. Jin Yunxing's vital energy and blood surged violently under such an extreme state of mind, and he seemed like a mad devil. He didn't even know how much the poison had strengthened him, and he just fought madly. Finally, when he put his life on the line and stomped down, it finally collapsed. Jin Yunxing didn't know what was going on at this instant, and the only thing he felt was that he seemed to have stepped on something. For the sake of stabilizing his body and maintaining his combat state, even if the ground had collapsed, he still exerted all his strength to stand firmly at the first possible moment. Only then would he be able to continue fighting. Otherwise, the slightest slip would cause him to be at the mercy of his enemies, in such a terrible situation where he was weak. Just now, I seem to have stepped on something, but I don't have to care about these details at this moment. They aren't important. In any case, I'm going to die today, so why should I care? What else is worth paying attention to? But in the next moment, an enormous aura suddenly rose up. It was him. Whether it was in the past or now, he was already the strongest he had ever been in his life. It was an absolute power that was difficult for him to come into contact with. Who was it? Was it a profound returning expert or a fairy? In short, it was a super expert that he had come into contact with, or rather, didn't know. Just as Jin Yunxing was in despair, a huge hammer suddenly appeared out of nowhere and saved him from the fatal hand of an almighty expert. For a moment, Jin Yunxing felt as if he was in a dream. What he didn't know was that he had just stepped on the hand of a profound returning expert and stomped on his stomach. With his cultivation base that had yet to reach the core realm, he could boast about this achievement for the rest of his life. With a loud bang, everything that had collapsed above was instantly cleared away. When he focused his eyes again, he could actually see the night sky outside. The black-robed man roared and shouted angrily, "Who are you?" Zhou Xiaoduo didn't say anything and swung his hammer over. It was fine to fight, but why did he have to announce his name? Who set this stupid rule? How much of a waste of time was it? An icy cold aura rose up. A sword came piercingly cold, as if it was responding to Zhou Xiaoduo's sledgehammer. It was Zhou Xiaonian. Her sword was cold and frosty, and its power was not inferior to Zhou Xiaoduo's hammer at all. Li Chenglong and the others also showed up and surrounded the black-robed man from all directions. The secret room was not very big, and it was impenetrable. Yu Moyan was the last to arrive. His sword was dripping with blood. That young master, his two bodyguards, and that ungrateful girl had all become ghosts under his sword. Yu Moyan hated such ungrateful people the most. Since he had encountered them, he wouldn't let any of them escape. When the girl saw Yu Moyan, her face was full of fear, and she looked pitiful. Unfortunately, she had just begged for mercy when Yu Moyan's sword cut off her head and pierced through her heart. Yu Moyan's thought was simple. Since you have no conscience, I'll just cut it out for you. After all, you won't need it anymore. The black-robed man saw that the situation had changed again. He groaned and mumbled something. Suddenly, starlight shone brightly. The moment the starlight shone on his injured hand, the wound healed instantly. The starlight surged and seemed to have increased his strength. He was able to block the joint attack of Zhuo and the others. Even though he still couldn't help but fall into a disadvantageous position, such a battle achievement was already sufficient to shock the world and shock everyone. No one noticed that far away in the sky, a star was shining brightly. Its light shone all around, making the stars around it pale in comparison. It was the Tanlang. With another boom, he slammed his palm on Zhuo's hammer again. But this time, it wasn't the black-robed man's arm that was dislocated or broken. Instead, it was Zhuo who felt a tremor in his hand and almost lost his grip on the hammer. At this moment, he was so shocked that he couldn't believe it. "This is Granny Tanlang." Zhuo really couldn't believe it. He had asked Emoshwani before. "Your master, Granny Tanlang, what is her cultivation level?" Mid-stage returning mystic. At that time, Emoshwani said it very confidently and without any doubt. But now, the black-robed man's cultivation level was at the Dao integration pinnacle Dao integration stage. This fact made Zhuo suspicious. Hammer after hammer, Zhuo shouted, "Greedy wolf Granny, you really live up to your reputation." Hearing this, the black-robed man's eyes flashed, and he said with a sinister smile, "Zhuo is indeed a prodigy of the generation." While laughing sinisterly, he continued to attack fiercely. More than half of his attacks landed on Zhuo's body. After fighting for a while, his body shook inexplicably, and the starlight suddenly scattered. On the ground, Jun Chongkong propped himself up and said, "Save me." It wasn't that Jun Chongkong was brainless and didn't realize that the black-robed man had ulterior motives. But the black-robed man was his only life-saving straw. With the appearance of Zhuo, Zhuo and the others, and the fact that their cultivation levels were far higher than before, he could only rely on the black-robed man to survive and escape this disaster. He hoped that he was still useful to the black-robed man. Most people didn't want to die, and Jun Chongkong especially didn't want to die. It was better to live a bad life than to die a good death. He wanted to live as long as he could. The black-robed man's eyes flashed fiercely. With a loud roar, starlight shot out from his body like hundreds of sharp arrows. Starlight arrows shrouded the area in all directions. Jun Chongkong, Jin Yunsheng, and the others were all within range. As the starlight burst out, Li Chengwang and the rest were unable to dodge in time, due to the limited space in the secret chamber. All of them had to use their full strength to defend against it. Everyone felt their bodies trembling. The might of the starlight was something that even Li Chenglong and the rest, who had already reached the sky realm, found difficult to deal with. Fortunately, they were only having a hard time. It wasn't to the extent that they couldn't resist, and their lives were in danger. However, Jun Chongkong didn't have this ability. The starlight flashed and exploded on Jun Chongkong's body. One on his head, one on his dantian, one on his chest. In the instant of the explosion, Jun Chongkong's body was blown to pieces by the starlight. Not even his bones were left. Chapter 12:17. Zhuo Xiaoyan swung her sword like the wind, blocking the starlight that was shooting towards her, and the two starlights that were shooting towards Jin Yunsheng. As for Jun Chongkong, who was close to her, she completely ignored him, and let him be annihilated in the starlight. "All of you retreat. Give me some space," Zhuo roared. Then he pointed one of his two hammers to the sky, and the other to the ground. With a muffled sound, he had already launched the Thousand Souls Nightmare Hammer, intending to kill the black-robed man. He had to come up with a killer move to end this battle as soon as possible. The current situation had exceeded his expectations by too much. It was very different from his initial plan. No matter if it was people or things, they were all beyond his expectations. In particular, Granny Greedy Wolf's own strength was far from what he had predicted. It was as easy as flipping one's hand, and it was as easy as flipping one's hand, and it had suddenly become unshakable. He had to go all out to prevent more accidents from happening. In particular, there were many civilians in the commercial area outside. The power that was like the explosion of the world was limited to a corner and fiercely smashed down. Black and white suddenly burst out from the eruption of the primordial fire divine art. Granny Tan Lang stretched out her hand to block it. Suddenly, she let out a muffled groan. However, Zhuoxiaoduo's second hammer came across the sky like a meteor catching up with the moon. In the blink of an eye, Zhuoxiaoduo had launched 5 consecutive attacks. Granny Greed let out a loud roar and coughed up blood. She let out another angry roar. And the starlight flowing through her body became even more brilliant. Her body swayed and turned into 20-something figures. Each of them shone with starlight, and they were incredibly beautiful. Many figures broke out from the encirclement in different directions. Zhuoxiaoduo and the others were already prepared for this. Each of them unleashed their highest combat power and intercepted them separately. Stop them! Boom! 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 Countless starlights burst out. Zhuoxiaoduo waved his 2 hammers and smashed 4 starlight clones one after another. Zhuoxiaonian's sudden burst of cold air froze 3 clones. Then she smashed them with the spirit-snatching sword. Li Chenglong and the others used all their strength to block them. And indeed, they managed to block quite a few of them. However, the secret technique that Granny Greedy Wolf used was mysterious and strange. The doppelgangers that they encountered all had considerable strength and were able to suppress Wan Li Xiu and the others. Zhen Piapiao and Dugu Yan'er, who were weaker, were no match for her. In the end, there were still 3 doppelgangers that broke through everyone's sealing force field and rushed into the sky. They turned into flowing lights and disappeared without a trace in the night sky. All that was left was a voice filled with resentment that echoed through the night sky. Zhuoxiaoduo, just you wait. After a short while, the voice also dissipated in the starlight that filled the sky. Even though they had clearly laid out the best of their plan, they still failed to capture the other party, let alone completely annihilate them. Zhuoxiaoduo and the others were a little dejected, feeling that something was not right. Especially Zhuoxiaoduo. He deeply felt that this Granny Greedy Wolf was completely different from what he had expected. Even though she was the head of a sect, Mo Xuani had clearly said that she was at the middle stage of the returning mysterious realm, so there should be no mistake. She couldn't have taken some medicine in the past 1 or 2 years to be able to rise so quickly. Didn't that mean that Granny Greedy Wolf was a genius comparable to him? This was not scientific. If so, what had she been doing all these years? However, this guy's strength was too strong to the point of being ridiculous. Besides, was this Granny Greedy Wolf a man or a woman? After fighting for so long, Zhuoxiaoduo still couldn't figure it out. At the other end of the commercial street, far away from the scene of the incident, in a very secluded place in a slum, the dim starlight suddenly dissipated, and a black-robed man fell from the sky and landed in the courtyard, making an extremely heavy muffled sound, and blood flowed out of his mouth. Help me! Come! Several figures flashed and flashed, and they were all shocked when they saw who it was. They saw a skinny and withered old woman in the black robe. Her face was pale, and she was about to die. How could this be? Several people hurriedly protected the old woman and helped her to heal her wounds. They quickly carried her inside, and someone stood guard outside. Their movements were experienced and clear. In the secret chamber. How could this be? How could she change so much? It's impossible for there to be such an expert in Shangjing City now. How could she be injured like this? It shouldn't be. Granny had activated the starlight of the Star Lord to the maximum, which was comparable to the power of the peak stage of the imitated Dao integration stage. How could she still be so seriously injured? Who on earth is her opponent? How could he be so strong? I'm afraid that the Star Formation project is most likely doomed. After a long time, Granny Greedy Wolf finally woke up slowly. Under everyone's questioning, she let out a long sigh. We've worked so hard for so long, but in the end, all our efforts were in vain. The Star Formation project was about to succeed, but it failed. I was forced to kill the third prince, Jun Changkong. Everyone's face was gloomy. Jun Changkong's life was not important, but the plan that they had planned for a long time suddenly failed. No one could bear it. The star formation project was so meticulous, and it had already entered the final stage. How could it fail? We've studied it for a long time before deciding on it. Moreover, the will of heaven was involved, and all the top experts of the astral souls were attracted to the front line. There was no providence in Shangjing that could affect this plan at all. How could it fail? Even if there's a variable like the poison of destiny, the aura divination, and the astrology show that the poison of destiny only exists in ants. It can't affect one's luck at all, so how could it? Didn't the Star Lord do his best to improve your strength? Why are you so miserable? Granny Greedy Wolf was speechless. I had no choice. I met Swishaoduo. Fuck. Everyone was speechless. This kind of stall. We had clearly planned it well, and didn't have any conflicts with them. We even had a relationship with them. How could we still meet them? Could it be that the will of heaven is playing tricks on us? Not only the astral souls, but also us? I don't know about this either. Everything happened so suddenly that I was caught off guard. Granny Greedy Wolf looked exhausted. This time, my soul has almost been completely shattered. My 3 souls and 7 spirits, the incarnation of the Star Lord, have all been shattered. Please use the Starlight Pool to help me recover, Granny Greedy Wolf said as she spat out blood from the corner of her mouth. Starlight Pool. Everyone sighed. Granny Greedy Wolf's injuries were extremely serious. If she wanted to recover, she would need to use the Starlight Pool in addition to taking many elixirs. If it were any other day, with Granny Greedy Wolf's status, it would be understandable for her to use it. However, if she rashly used the Starlight Pool, she would inevitably lose a part of her foundation in this north-south star formation. At the moment of the future battle for Providence, it would definitely be reduced. However, without Granny Greedy Wolf, this star formation would not even be able to function. The Killing and Breaking Wolf 3 stars had to exist before the star formation could exist. If someone was absent from the Killing and Breaking Wolf team, a constellation would fall. Forget it. This is the only way. Another middle-aged man sighed. I didn't expect such a perfect star formation to have a flaw and collapse completely. Everyone's faces were filled with gloomy clouds. They were all lamenting that they had failed in this round, that they were bound to win. The top experts of the astral souls were driven away by the will of heaven. It should be the will of heaven. How could it be like this? And that's Wishaoduo. He was a fucking shit stirrer. Why was he everywhere? What about the star formation map? Did you bring it back? And the 15-star battle aura crystal? Did you bring it back? We clearly felt that the battle aura crystal had formed. Even if there was a flaw, and we couldn't bring it back completely, we could at least bring back a part of it, right? Another person asked with a glimmer of hope. It happened so suddenly. I controlled the battle aura crystal and took a risk. I even forced Jun Chongkong to use a large amount of blood essence, hoping to turn the situation around. However, it was just an ant that stepped on me and ruined my plan. Everything was so unbelievable, but it was real. The star formation was destroyed on the spot. Granny Greedy Wolf's eyes were lifeless. Everyone was speechless. Fuck. Not only did they not bring back the battle aura crystal, but they also had to activate the Starlight Pool. Not only did their plan fail, but they also suffered losses. They had lost so much that they were about to lose their underwear. Everyone said that they had lost so much that they had lost so much that they had lost so much. Those words were true. Everyone looked at Granny Greedy Wolf with a complicated expression. They felt that she had given her the wrong name. She must have given it the wrong name. This was really a huge loss. Damn it. Damn it. This was Wishaoduo. How did he appear there so coincidentally? He has the blessing of dragons. What we did this time doesn't match at all. How did he get there? Even the battle aura crystal doesn't have such a method. After listening to Granny Wolf's explanation, everyone was still puzzled. However, it's useless for others to have the battle aura crystal. No one will even recognize it. We might be able to find a chance to snatch it back. Didn't Granny Wolf say that he forced Jun Chongkong's blood essence crystal at the last moment? Although he didn't succeed fully, he might have at least 50 to 60% of the effect. One of them said, with the connection of minds as a guide, It's not difficult to determine the location of the object. The situation might not be irreversible. Snatching something from Zhuo, it's easier said than done. He survived the heavenly tribulation safely, and his strength is not what it used to be. Granny Wolf activated the Battle Aura Crystal, and was no different from a Dao Integration Pinnacle Stage cultivator. However, he was still defeated and severely injured. Who among us can take it easily? Another person sighed. On the other side, Li Chengwang and the others went out to calm the people outside. Zhuo casually touched the tattered star map on the ground, only to find that a few small dots had rolled out. What's this? Zhuo picked it up and looked around. There were at most 15 of these little things. 14 of them were dark red, and the last one was slightly ruddy. It was still sparkling like a miniature star. It seems to be quite fun. Zhuo took it in his hand and sized it up. Mommy, this is delicious. Bai and Jiu appeared in the form of little dolls. They spun around in Zhuo's hand, and the 14 dark red little stars all disappeared. Then, little Jiu stretched out a tender green gourd vine, and pinched the remaining glowing one. She picked it up and handed it to Little White. Bai shook its head proudly, indicating that it didn't care. Jiu then gave it to Bai with a fawning expression. Take it. Little White was reserved for a while before it finally opened its mouth and swallowed the last luminous object. It patted its little belly without leaving a trace and turned around proudly before disappearing. Jiu did a somersault in satisfaction and patted its belly before disappearing as well. I'm full. Thank you, Mommy. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.